America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the walls. The chair is against the walls. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Daily Gun Show. We come to you live each weekday, each weeknight at midnight Eastern. That's 9 Pacific. For about an hour each night, we talk about guns. It'll be a little bit longer tonight since our campaign for the Firearms and Vendors playing cards is ending in a couple of hours. I guess midnight on the East Coast or the West Coast here. So we're just going to run it live through the end of that. Just distracted here because at the last minute, midnight saying about an email, and no, I didn't get any email, so I was just checking that. We've got some people joining us tonight. I'll go through the room here, say hey to everybody. We got Clover jumping in from Texas. Thanks for joining.
You bet. Good to be here.
You know what? Texas is a pretty good state. You ever hear anybody say that before?
A few people. Yeah, they probably don't live here, but yeah.
No, I'm a big fan of that state.
Right.
Then we got David jumping in from Florida. Your state's okay.
Yeah, so it's gotten worse lately, but thanks for the heads up.
Got Dead Horse jumping in from Utah.
Howdy.
Joining. Gary from Kansas.
Thanks for the invite.
Gary didn't want to come in without another Kansan, so brought Night Prowler in tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Two Kansasians. I don't know how you call yourselves in plural. Has there ever been two people from Kansas at the same place at the same time?
No, I think this is the first time ever.
Yeah.
And then got Potatoes. Were you in Michigan?
Yep, I'm in Michigan. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah,
a lot of people hate my state, but I like it.
Well, it looks like a mitten. That bothers a lot of people because we're glove country. Country was made out of gloves. You didn't see mittens on the moon. But that's the kind of politics we're not going to address here tonight. We'll keep it friendly. I'm down here in Arizona. We've got other links out there. We've got Patreon supporters out there. I gave them a link tonight since they're a big part of keeping us online for these kind of things. And if anybody's over on the gun channels and would like the link, let us know. We're watching the gun channels chat, the YouTube chat a bit here and there. And all right, so it's what is it today? Thursday. So usually we talk about training, but that's boring, and there's nobody else here. So I'm making the rules. I'm not talking about training, so I'm not training that much. So we can talk about the cards. Clover's here, so I was thinking about concept of punching down. Since you're all about the punching up, I was thinking about punching down. Talk about that a little bit. We could talk about some of the people that have been doing cards for today. Anybody heard of this guy called Verdan?
Like Verdan Primed?
Yep, that guy. So that's all I ever thought. I thought I knew everything about him. I figured it'd take me 5 minutes to do that card, and I was wrong. So that's been an interesting story. And then there's some others. Or if you guys have topics, we can talk about them. If anybody has stuff to talk about as far as a campaign goes, we can talk about nerd stuff. And of course, we'll be watching the campaign. Oh, and then of course, I've got some news. As we were doing Yankees show, or as he was doing his show, with all that going on, I had been emailing all day with my printers because there's a minimum order, and I didn't know how many cards we were going to get and the need and that kind of thing. So anyway, they promised to do some more cards in the future, of course, but we're getting the cards made during Clover's show. He emailed me back at 11:30 at night for Texas time, and that's super cool. So now every one of our decks now will have been made in the USA. So however many thousands of dollars it's going to end up costing to have them made, that's all staying in Texas. So that's pretty cool. So anyway, we'll be watching that, and hopefully, let's see. Am I screen sharing right now? Yeah. I'll zoom this over here. We'll refresh this every once in a while, and hopefully we'll get to that 5,000 because that'll make us 200% funded. And that's good. So with that, I already introduced everybody. Anybody want to start digging into? I guess I'm getting a little tired.
Well, I wouldn't mind hearing about the Berdan because other than the primers, I don't know anything.
Anybody else? We got David in here, Dead Horse, knowledgeable people, Nightcrawler.
Hey, I'm just for the ride, so whatever you guys do with me.
So, but I guess I'm saying, has anybody heard of Berdan or any of his exploits or triumphs? I don't know what you'd call them. Accomplishments?
Well, I know that Berdan. I just know about the primer, like itself, right? Like it's not generally considered reloadable, even though you can, but it's not easy, like a boxer primer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's considered to be pretty. It was supposed to be used for disposable steel cases, really, right?
I have no idea. So that's the thing. I figured it was the primer guy. So all of the stuff I was going to find was going to be about the primer. I hardly found anything about the primer other than, it's different than boxer primer.
And I'm pretty sure the original Berdan primers were all corrosive primers. I don't think they're that way anymore, like the new Berdan primers, but I think all the old ones were all corrosive.
Well, probably whatever chemicals.
Yeah.
The boxer primer came out like 15 minutes later, like 2 years later or 3 years later. 3 years later. I got 89.
One of the big reasons why the Soviets went with Berdan primers is the extreme shelf life. They can keep ammunition that's been loaded, and they have ammunition, the Soviet Union does, that's been loaded since the late 70s, and it still fires perfectly fine today. So that was one of the big drawings for them, was ammunition that could be stored in crates for generations.
Interesting. So that's, again, come from the chemical makeup, because it's more than just the physical difference of one hole and two holes, right? It's the priming charge is different.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the actual chemical compound and also the metal that's involved with the actual primer. That's why they tend to be a harder primer, and AKs have a stronger hammer. And for that reason, basically, that's why you have issues with AR-15 shooting Berdan primers with stock mil-spec hammer springs. So that's just a little tidbit that I picked up over the years about them.
Right on. So he invented these things in 1866, but that was just one of his things. So I guess from 1840, so this guy starts out, and I don't even have in here, I forgot to put in here that he worked for Remington. So I think he started out life as a kid. I should probably open up the Wikipedia again. He started out life as a kid and worked for Remington and, no, not Remington, Winchester, or maybe it was Winchester. I gotta go look. He worked for one of the manufacturers, though, for a bit, and must have been where he developed his opinions or whatever. But in 1846 to 1860, he was the #1 rifle shot in this country. So when they would have competitions and stuff, he won them every single year from 1846 to 1860. So when they start the Civil War, he goes over to some general and says, I want to create a group of sharpshooters. So they say, that's a great idea. So he goes and handpicks the best shooters from 18 different places and 8 states, and takes all the best guys, turns them into 2 companies or something of sharpshooters, and they proceed to kick the crap out of the South. So the South have a better rifle that can shoot farther, but these guys are snipers. These guys are snipers, basically. And they go around, they put a bounty on generals and go around basically creating a situation where people say, is this even moral? Like, should these people...
Guerrilla warfare is what it was.
Yeah, basically. They had green, everybody else in the Union got blue uniforms. Berdan made his guys green uniforms. And then instead of having stupid brass buttons, in fact, I need to change this picture, he changed the buttons to dark, because it was the closest, they say that it's the closest thing to a camouflage uniform in the Civil War. They would climb up in a tree with an optic and be snipers. They used Sharp's rifles, and that's a whole story in itself. So Berdan, right, this guy who's the #1 shot in the country, is tasked with by some generals to get together the best sharpshooters, and well, they call them sharpshooters. I'm guessing that's what we call snipers today, right? Get the best sharpshooters and train them, and basically go kick ass in front of the front lines and wreak havoc the rest of the time. And so he says, okay, we need sharps. Everybody else is using muskets. And the guy who's in charge of procurement for the Civil War is 67 years old. And he's like, no, muskets are fine. If you got too many bullets, you just start shooting crazy. We want you to be accurate and aim. So we want you to have to load every round. So muskets are fine for you. And he's like, nope. So he keeps hounding at him, and they're like, no, you can only use muskets. And he goes out and gets some of his own Sharps rifles and gives them to his guys, but it's not enough. So he finally, there's the story is he gets to, the Lincoln comes out to inspect his sharpshooter unit, and he's impressed. And then the Berdan is like, give me some Sharps rifles now. And Lincoln's, I guess somebody, the guy from the Army had challenged him and said, well, if you can take a shot for 600 yards standing and shoot that guy in the right eye, the target in the right eye. I guess some guys there was a face drawn on a barn 600 yards away. They said, if you can hit that guy in the right eye, then maybe I'll see the need for these rifles. So Berdan takes the rifle from the guy. There's like a story where Berdan is describing the story. He takes the rifle from the guy, takes aim. He says, I took aim at the center of the head. Luckily, the bullet pierced his right pupil. He gives the rifle to Lincoln, and for the rest of his life, Lincoln was giving him shit about that. He's like, oh, that's a lucky shot. And he's like, nope, it's a good shot. So anyway, needless to say, he got his Sharps rifles. President Lincoln was like, give him his fucking Sharps rifles. So cool dude. That's as much as I've researched on him. He also built like a twin rotor submarine, some kind of torpedo, and something else. He's got 30 patents. So pretty cool dude. And part of the reason it was neat to, or it is neat to be researching these things. Because I would have thought this is
He became a brevet brigadier general.
Yeah, there's some debate as to, like, he was finally buried in Arlington Cemetery as that rank, whatever that is, and there's some debate as to whether he actually was that rank. But I guess there's some division as to whether or not he was ornery or good at leadership. And I suspect when you have somebody who's outside the standard role of a soldier, then you become unconventional. You're going to be considered unconventional by conventional generals, right? So he was considered difficult to work with, but I suspect that's because he wasn't used to the status quo or used to dealing with it. He worked outside the box, right? But I don't know. It's interesting. There's a book written about him, so I didn't read the book. I just did research online.
Maybe this is a dumb question, but like, okay, so he was very adamant about using the Sharps rifle, you said, right?
Sharps rifle was a breech loaded, so he could, you could be crouched down behind cover and load the thing, whereas with stupid muzzleloader, you have to get up and muzzleload the damn thing.
Where does the term sharpshooter come from?
Sharps rifle.
Is it? Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Do you think they were? I was just making sure. I thought that would be pretty coincidental if it wasn't that's where they got the term from.
There's a link. You can find the ad that he put out during the Civil War, at the beginning, I guess, in 1860, whenever he started this thing, that they called them sharpshooters then. So sharpshooter, I think, was a term. Well, I know it's a term from the Sharps rifle, but he has. If you look at the little, what would you call it? What did they call that piece of paper that they would hang back in the day, the bulletin or whatever, the wanted. So that was the help wanted ad, and it said be a sharpshooter. It was a $20 bounty for joining up, and then you got $100 at the end of the war, plus your normal pay. So you got an extra $120 to be a sharpshooter if you passed all the things and you were a sharpshooter. But they called you a sharpshooter in that wanted ad, be a sharpshooter, work for Berdan.
So you think that's directly linked to him, not just the rifle? You think it's his?
He called it the sharpshooters. That's the name.
Awesome.
He called it the sharpshooters. But that's what I'm saying. I don't think he created the word. I suspect the word existed, and he called his unit that. Right? I don't see anything that says he invented the word.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and also they thought that they paid them an extra wage to become a sharpshooter because it was considered back in those days very ungentlemanly to not engage on a combat battlefield and to be off on the side in the bushes and taking pop shots. They would consider that. The British considered that very ungentlemanly like, and it took a special. Go ahead. What?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, so they were looked at by both sides as not as upstanding, so to speak, but as the war progressed and the generals saw what a benefit their tactics were, it kind of started to go away. So the negativity part of it.
Well, you're right, wasn't under, essentially, up until this point, wasn't, it just you were out in the field shooting at each other, where now you've got these guys that it was almost considered cowardly to do what they were doing, but it proved to be a great tactic.
That was two different wars, though.
We're talking about the Civil War here, not the Revolutionary War. And yes, we had tactics in the Revolutionary War, but this was definitely considered immoral. There's a couple of things I seen that as I was researching Berdan about his unit and it was the South that thought they were basically immoral. They were murderers. That was outside their own.
Because that doesn't make any sense to me, because the South had a bunch of unconventional tactics that they were using against us.
Well, you can be offended in war, I guess, even though you're doing the same damn thing, I guess. But that was like, I'm assuming it's, wasn't that far off from the Revolutionary War. It was still that same idea that if you were going to have a battle, you would have a battle. But, I don't know. I really can't. I guess I could see it if you're the general, but everybody else, wouldn't you rather have sharpshooters picking off generals than planes or blimps or something dropping bombs on whole areas to try to get that general? I would think.
Oh, I think so. I think it was a great tactic, actually.
And you also got to remember that these wars, people came in their best Sunday clothes and in their best carriages to actually watch the war. It was like a big entertainment thing, and the very first newspapers and first
I think
cameras.
that's more. I think that might be more myth than fact, because I watched a thing about that, and they said it happened only one time, and the South kicked the Union's ass during that battle, and it was all the Union people that were out watching it, like the families, and then they panicked when they saw the Union soldiers running away. So then they all ran away too, and were trampling each other and all that. And then I don't think it happened again after that. I was actually just watching a little mini documentary on that about the people coming out to watch the wars, and there's only one real cited case of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they ran away. they were all on the side of the Union, right? And they all, when the Union retreated, they all freaked out, right? And I think there was even a couple of the civilians got hurt, they got shot and hit with cannon fire and stuff. Yeah, I don't know that it says that Berdan guy, it says that he also invented a mechanical bakery. Yep. And a reaper, and he developed the first commercial gold amalgamation machine, to separate gold from ore. So that had to make him rich, right? Separating gold from ore, the first commercial.
If you look at the biographies of the day, we're getting a weird echo. If you look at the better biographies or the longer biographies online, they say that he was wealthy many times over from his inventions. He retired from the military and then, I guess, was given a rank. And I don't know if he had to do anything for that rank. Maybe he trained people or kept shooting. But after he retired from the military, he just went on to tinker and create. So it sounds like he had all kinds of ideas coming out of him. They said somewhere in there too that when they would be at rest or at off, not fighting, that his guys never had to deal with. It was like the beginning of more of an elite force because they didn't do any of the normal chores or anything. They spent all their time training. So he would get his guys and drill them and take them out for skill practice, where the other guys would just sit around being off duty or whatever.
Yeah, he required his candidates for that sharpshooter team to be able to place 10 shots in a 3-inch circle at 200 yards. A 10-shot group, 3-inch circle, 200 yards, no optics.
I guess 600 shot for the Civil War. So guns that could reach out to 600 yards were useful, but then you'd have to be able to take a gun to its extreme, right? So you'd get guns that could shoot farther than that, and you put somebody who knew what they were doing behind them. And there was a story it was like a story of the sharpshooters that they were attached to units, but they would go out in front of units and wreak havoc, like a spec ops team like we have nowadays that do those kind of roles. They've always had that need to cause a little bit of havoc and be recon and to scout, right? Bring back information and that kind of thing. So they're out there causing havoc or whatever. So they said that these units, just like anything, you have to go eat somewhere. So they were known to be skillful or whatever. Anyway, so there's this story of a general who said this is a northern general and a sharpshooter are sitting around eating, I guess, and some Confederate guy keeps pegging around trying to kill this general, but he's way the hell on the other side of a field and he's just shooting all around. So they figure at some point something's going to happen and he's going to hit something. So the general asked the sharpshooter, he's like, hey, how far is that guy? And he looks and he goes, I reckon about 1,100 yards. And the general says, can you get rid of him? And he says, yeah, sure, let me try it. So he takes one shot, and they said that they were all sitting there looking at him in spotting glasses or whatever, and the guy got hit in the foot, and he walked away or climbed away or whatever, hobbled away in such a funny way that they laughed about it for the rest of the war and shit. So that guy is sitting there all afternoon taking pot shots from across this giant field, figuring he's far enough away or whatever. Their sharpshooter takes one shot, hits the guy in the fucking foot. He goes running. Fuck that.
And back then, that's probably gangrene and an amputation waiting to happen.
He also invented a long-distance rangefinder. So I bet that helped them with their cannon fire and stuff like that, right? More accurately.
Oh, snap. 199%. Sorry, interrupt there, but okay, it's my show. I'm interrupted. Oh, I can't zoom in on this. I tried before. Dang it. See what happens when you try to zoom in. But anyway, what are we, $25 away basically from hitting 200%. That'd be kind of cool. So I wonder, we didn't get any action from Japan. Sorry, I'm cutting you off there. So what we were saying about the
Well, he just invented a long-distance rangefinder, and I bet that really helped them back then for cannon fire and probably even for maybe naval engagements, right? Being able to accurately range the distance of objects.
Somebody, who was it yesterday, was in the chat, was suggesting we use the inventor of ballistics. And he sent me a link to a Wikipedia, but it didn't really have a name of a person who was the inventor of ballistics. But I wonder, okay, so you have a calculator. Which came first, the ballistic calculator or the science of ballistics and stuff? They must have been doing ballistics from way back in the beginnings of geometry and math and shit, I guess. And then just applying it.
Yeah, everything was done manually before computers. So these were guys with slide rulers, probably 20 or 30 engineers in a room,
Oh,
and
okay.
they're, just trying to figure out
I
velocity and everything else, roll barometric pressures, and they're probably they're probably got some kind of forecasting equipment. They're probably
well,
trying to go ahead.
I think ballistics were invented the second the first caveman or monkey like picked up a rock and threw it. Like, oh, if I throw it at this angle, it goes farther. Like, and then it just took off from there to spears, to bow and arrows, to catapults, to that's probably how far back it goes. Is literally to when we would use rocks and spears, right? I don't know who you could really equate with inventing ballistics. Maybe someone like Newton, Sir Isaac Newton. Like, I mean, that has a lot to do with ballistics. Who did the law of motion? Wasn't that Galileo? Right. So like maybe both, like it'd be like a mix between maybe Galileo and Newton, and I don't know. Might even have to throw a couple other guys in there. If you want to get down to about who invented the science of it, really, I guess. I actually wrote down the science.
I was just about to go live over here on the Instagram and I saw a ballistics post. You see that? His house?
Ballistic expansion?
Yep.
No, I haven't seen that one. I don't think I've seen his newest post.
It must be recent. I just saw it right now, but very cool. It was neat to see that jumping in. So I just started the Instagram live. We're over here on Gun Channels, of course, going live, and we're doing the daily gun show, but it's a weird episode tonight because the Firearms Inventor playing card deck is ending tonight. It's actually ending, I guess, in 2 hours. It says so, probably midnight Pacific time. So we're just running a show live and chatting with some people from the gun channels and from our Patreon page. And I'm just going to refresh here because we were at 199%. I'm going to see if anything's changed, and it has not. So 199%, almost 200% funded. Hopefully we'll see another $24 or so come in tonight, or a lot more. I was saying, I'm cutting everybody off now, but I was saying before that somebody contacted me, a reporter from Japan, and said that there's some sort of Japanese TV show or something happening where they are interested in olden time U.S. 18th century U.S. firearms inventors. So what are the odds of that? But I haven't seen any big funding come in from Japan or anything. Anybody aware of Japanese trends in television currently?
Not Japanese, but Chinese. My father-in-law's wife is Chinese, and what's really big in China right now are the 50s and the 1980s. The retro kind of like punk rock scene from like Depeche Mode and Erasure, that kind of stuff. And then like the 50s old school rock and roll, like Elvis Presley, John Lennon, that kind of thing are going on really big. Americana is very big in China, so I would imagine it'd be very big in Southeast Asia, Thailand, and all of the Asian countries.
Let's see. So we got some people watching on the Instagram side. The good news is that we did get a return commitment, or I don't call it commitment. We got a reply from the printers, and they are going to be made in Texas. So that's awesome. Lee Armory is saying, let's do a deck of AKs and AK history. You know it. I'm definitely down for that. I was thinking about doing a colorized deck, so if we want to do something, we can work something out. I am sure of that. And we will have a couple of AKs, of course, well, AK-related things in the in this deck. Of course, Kalashnikov. I'll do his card last, I think. And then, well, let's go look. We looked at this a little bit earlier, too. Wait, is this the right one? No, it's the Daily Gun Show Secrets. Let's not look at that. Let's look at this. So I've got a Google Doc, Google spreadsheet, basically, that has all the cards listed down here. So I'm going to go backwards because we were just talking about Kalashnikov. I got Dragunov. I've got Simonov, Mosin, and I thought I had another Ruski in here, Makarov. And there might be another one that I'm forgetting. We also have Galil, and I think that's it for AK stuff. But let's start from the top. So have we gone through this list? Do you guys know who all we're going to have in the deck? Oh, Clover's saying it went to 201. And now copyright strike, but it was worth it. So that's cool. So we just hit the 200%. What I like about that is, number one, it means that we got more decks coming, so we can definitely get them made in Texas, and I don't feel so bad, you know, bugging them, because these companies work for casinos, I'm guessing, or maybe what? Like, I've seen SIG do cards before. I've seen Mossberg do cards. So when a company like that does cards, they're not dealing with, you know, 50 decks or whatever, or 100 decks. They're dealing with, you know, thousands probably. I can't even imagine. So, you know, they're dealing with our little projects and stuff. I think it's cool. They liked the gun ones. They came along and found me, and they're in Texas, so I guess it makes sense. But they found me with the gun ones. So anyhow, yeah, very cool that we hit the 200% there. Where was I going in about a million different directions? I don't know what the hell's going on with Japan. It bugs me because I was hoping to get a whole bunch of Japanese money. I like keeping our money here, but I really like getting money from other countries. It kind of screws you on shipping. So I'm thinking about at some point offering some kind of consulting, because that's what I like to do, is help people with their projects. I'd like to put some kind of package together. Maybe I can get Clover to help me out with it. Somebody else who might be interested to kind of summarize my experience with all these projects, because I've had plenty of successes, but also failures. And I've watched lots of projects that I've been involved with or interested in. And again, lots of successes, but also failures. There's always stuff to learn. So I'm thinking about trying to do something to help people out with these things to try to, you know, figure them all out. But anyhow, it would have been neat to get a bunch of Japanese money for sure, right? As far as the Kalashnikov ones and Lee Armory, yeah, let's get together. You actually live, our friend Jimmy, the guy who does one of the shows here on Gun Channels, one of the live shows, lives like a block from you. So I don't need much excuse to get up there, and sounds like I got a place to hang out right there too. Maybe in a couple of weeks when it's not like 110 during the day. So I was just looking at the weather. It's going to be like 110 early next week. Anyhow, definitely a lots of potential for more Kalashnikov history. We still got to finish this one. I was going to look at the inventors over there. And you'll see when we start digging into here. I've got this. Can you tell from the? You can tell on the screen capture. You can't tell on Instagram. These yellow ones are done. So we've got half of them to go, a little bit less than half. All right, so we're getting into the different suits. You got spades, hearts, clubs, and diamonds. The first two are USA, right? And the first spades here are most of the ones that were military designs. So we start with Browning as ace of spades, of course. Remington, and this is, I addressed this earlier when we were doing this live before. This is tough to organize. I didn't know how to lay them out. I knew I wanted Kalashnikov, and I knew I wanted Browning. I knew I needed Stoner, Gatling. You know, some of them fall into place, but then you start getting to, 52 seems like a lot, but you get to the end, and it was a little bit tough to figure out the last couple. They pretty much all fell into place to get to 52, but then how do you organize them, right? So, okay, the U.S. guns, that makes sense. The U.S. inventors, that kind of makes sense. Doesn't make any sense when you get out to the other countries because there's no rhyme or reason. So it's sort of like I say, the military stuff first, the other U.S. stuff second, and then kind of just a mix of international stuff. And then once I kind of organized them into those groups, I went chronologically. So starting with aces, and then you get to the most historic, and then the most recent with the kings to some extent. Because I also wanted then, just for artistic whatever style, to have legitimate inventors on the key cards. So Browning, of course, ace of spades. There's nobody's going to contest that. I put Gatling on the king of spades. I went with Derringer for the ace of hearts, and then Ingram for the king of hearts. Giradani, however you say that guy, who invented the air rifle, who looks a lot like Dano, for the ace of clubs, and then Atchison, the AA-12 for the king of clubs. Went with Puckle, with the basically a machine gun that was created before the Constitution, for all the Second Amendment haters who want to suggest it was only written for black powder, or for what, muskets, and the founding fathers had no idea what a machine gun was. So we have the Puckle gun, and I think that's the earliest thing in the deck, or the earliest inventor in the deck. And no, he's not. This guy is, right? Oh no, he is older. Giordani is not as old. Anyway, and then Kalashnikov for the king of diamonds. I feel like I'm just blabbing. Is anybody else in here still?
No, I'm just being quiet because I'm in a crowded area right now.
Well, let's see. So Slim was asking about, Elmer Keith. So that's a whole nother thing. Let me finish who we're talking about here, and then we'll talk about other decks, because I think same with like Lee Armory over here on Instagram. There's lots of potentials for other decks. I'm just getting started with these three. I really like this thing, and this is teaching me a lot more about how to get a deck made that doesn't need to, well, what do we need? We have 200? No, we didn't even have 200. Where did I put the thing? We have 126 people interested in this. That's not that many. So if I can figure out how to get a deck made for something as uninteresting to most people as Second Amendment advocates, then we'll figure out how to get some other history stuff out there too. I might do them as flashcards though, because this whole deck thing, I don't know if it's necessary. I don't know if it's appealing to people or not. I'll look for some feedback on that. All right, so let's dig through the aces. With all that in mind, this is what I came up with. So like I say, they kind of fell into place once I went, what is this? This isn't numerically, this is chronologically, right? So we got Browning, Remington, Sharps, then Winchester, Colt, and Wesson. I wanted to split up Smith and Wesson, and since Smith didn't do anything all that good, he kind of invented a bullet and then paid for some stuff and then retired. Wesson's the guy who did everything. I left Wesson on this side. We got Spencer, Thompson, Rising, Johnson, Stoner, Barrett, and Gatling. So there's only 7 guys, according to the internet, who have firearms adopted by the U.S. military. 6 of them are in this list, because 6 of them are Americans. Which is the one that ain't? Patriot doesn't get to guess because he knows.
Graham.
Yep. Or were you saying that you're going to give the winner a Garand?
Negative.
Okay. Yeah, some Canadian made her Garand. Dope. Somebody paid for something. Thanks for that. Let's see. So then we had the Hearts. So we go with Derringer. You got Hunt, who is the guy that created the firing cock repeating gun, which is the lever. So the volcanic. You got Browning. This is Jonathan Browning. So this is Browning's dad, right? He had to exist so that Browning could exist. He also made the harmonica gun. And he also made Browning. So, you know what I mean? We got Smith, like I said, he's the other half of Smith & Wesson. We got Roland White. I don't know if that's something else, but that's awesome. Thank you. Sometimes it gives me two, like an echo ring, but if that's two things, that's awesome. Roland White, he's the guy that invented the bored through cylinder, kinda. So the part of the Colt's revolver, Colt invented the locking revolver, the locking cylinder in a revolver, right? So that's where Colt comes along and makes an effective revolver, but it's a percussion. It's still black powder. You have to load each one. So Roland comes along, makes this goofy thing that has a bored through cylinder. Smith & Wesson fail with the volcanic and go, hey, let's make a revolver instead, because the lever's not working with the way we want to use our new ammo, because they're going to invent caseless ammo or cartridges right in a minute. So they need this guy's bored through cylinder to make their revolver. So does Colt when he goes to cartridges and everybody else. So Roland White is necessary. Well, not necessary, but that's his little part of the equation. That's why he's in the deck. We got Henry, the Henry rifle, which is, the guy who comes along and makes the Winchester, right? We got Savage. We talked about him the other day. That guy is crazy cool life. Maxim. This is the silencer Maxim, so the son of the suppressor Maxim. Then we got Pedersen device, lots of other stuff. Browning calls them like the best gun designer or something. You got Carbine Williams, character and inventor of a couple of things, the short stroke gas piston and the floating chamber that we use in a bunch of different firearms today. You got Weatherby, interesting guy who came onto the scene, in the 50s, almost the 60s, and just went crazy with the hunting stuff. And I suspect, I don't know enough about it, but I suspect there's a whole aspect of firearms history here with the Weatherbys and the Savages and the hunting stuff that I'm just not into, so I'm not as big a hunter as I could be. Then you got Ruger, love him or hate him, super interesting dude, comes onto the scene, looks at the Nambu and the other Nazi guns and goes, there's not a lot of cheap 22s in this country, and we should make one, and let's make it look like one of these guns that everybody's familiar with from the war. And they make that, and how many millions of them? 8 million of those Ruger 22s, the standard models have been made.
Bunches and bunches.
Tons. Then he does the same thing with 10-22. He says, hey, you know what? There's not a 22 rifle there's either little kids' garbage guns, or there's like maybe a super fancy Auschwitz. There ain't nothing for a regular person. So he makes a 10-22 out of basically an M1 carbine looking thing, and takes two guns from World War II, makes them actual worth a damn as a sporting gun, and has involvement in every firearm that his company makes. It's one of the most diverse companies, makes everything from revolver, did the same thing with revolvers. Says, hey, you know what, there isn't a decent 22 revolver that's something like an old cowboy gun. Makes the what is it, the 6?
Single 6, yeah.
Yeah, and then revolutionizes that, goes on to do all the Blackhawks and everything else. So shotguns, come on, Ruger, you can hate him for being a freaking idiot with this.
They cover every platform, every design, every
type of gun, and they did a decent job. It's not like they just throw a thing in they decent stuff. And maybe the stylizing you might not like, but that had to do with him being involved in everyone. But definitely an interesting character. And then he screws it all up at the end. He could have gone down as being close to Browning, I suspect.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And goes along, and he writes a letter to Congress, every single person in Congress in 1989, and tells them, hey, you don't have to worry about nothing. I figured it all out. Just make high capacity magazines illegal. You don't have to worry about nothing else. I'm sure in his mind it sounded awesome, but with the 2020 internet hindsight, he's never going to live that down. So crazy. And I put that on the card. The Ruger's not paying us, so it's on the card. His letter to Congress.
Gee.
Yeah.
And another quick thing about Bill Ruger. He actually, the Mark 1 22 pistol was originally a hand drill that he was trying to design to sell to construction crews and stuff, and it looks like a Mark 1 pistol, but it's just, a crude steel body that's got the same shaped angle grip frame, and it's got a hand crank for a drill with a chuck on it. And basically he got the idea because so many men were bringing home at that, slightly before then, the Lugers as war trophies. And a lot of men didn't get the chance to actually get one because they were so scarce. And so he decided to make a 22 pistol that looked like one of the Lugers, and it went off crazy popular.
Seriously, like 8 million. I forget how many variants. They're still working on it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and still counting. You can still buy the older looking variants. They're not the Mark 1s anymore. I think they're on the Mark 4, and they've got they've gone with an aluminum upper receiver, I'm going to call it, that barrel assembly that's actually the serialized gun.
Not always.
And
The lower, not always on the aluminum. Not on the not unless you're talking about the light.
well, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The new light.
With the light,
The older ones were stainless or blue steel,
yeah,
or some type of coating. And then the 2245 as well.
Yeah. So, like I say, the guy definitely crazy. It was a crazy. All these they really have interesting stories. Then we got Ingram, Mac 10, some other stuff. I just a big fan of that one. I wanted to include him in there. So then we get to Bartholomew's Giordani. I don't know how to say that. I don't have any picture of this guy. Need a picture, something. You know what? Somebody in here, there was no picture of Forsyth, the next guy we're going to talk about, but I found a coin from England that has his face on a coin. So I was able to do that cartoon technique to the coin. So I'm hoping to find something, but I've done too much research on this damn guy already. I really wanted it in there because I want air rifles to be incorporated into it for a couple of reasons. I think a lot of kids get into guns from air rifles. I certainly did. Well, you know what I mean? It's the first guns you can have when you're a kid. So obviously you're going to be interested in them. Really, it's super interesting history. It's American history, the history of the BB gun and the air gun, and it's Second Amendment history. I mean, it's making a toy for the First Amendment. When you're a slave and you're a subject, you don't get to make toys, of the things that you can't even have. So this is just people making toys of stuff that you're about to have to learn. Anyway, so I just think the air guns are a neat thing. Plus, this air gun is the one that Lewis and Clark used to not have to just slaughter every Indian tribe they came across. They were able to impress them with shock and awe with a thing that was a black powder rifle that could shoot and break a piece of wood at whatever 60 yards or something without making any report and without sending out any smoke. And they were able to do that 18 times before they had to put it away because it was empty. The Indians didn't know that. They thought they were freaking magic, and they didn't know how many of them they had in their boat. And because of that shock and awe, we were able to, Lewis and Clark were able to explore relatively peacefully. And I think that's a neat part of American history as well. And it's definitely gun history. So I wanted to put them in here, but it's frustrating when I don't have anything to go off of. So if anybody knows a picture of Bartholomew Giordani, or where to get one, that'd be cool. Somebody had an idea to use just like a picture of Lewis and Clark, how they're hanging out with the Indians. They've got a couple of like picture, paintings that depict the encounters. But I don't really have little paintings on any of them, so hoping to find an actual bust or head. Or maybe I should look for statues. There might be a bust or something of the guy. He's from Italy or wherever this Tyrol, Austria-Hungary is. It was a different name back in 1744, I guess. Countries aren't the same over there. All right, so that was that guy. But anyway, the air rifle. Then we get John Forsyth, Reverend Forsyth, who is the percussion cap. Not all that interesting. I put him in here because I wanted to get some Europeans because they were involved with stuff, and I guess the percussion cap kind of turned into the cartridge. So right? But it's kind of boring. The guy just made this little contraption that put the stuff in a percussion cap, like in a little thing, and then it's kind of like a powder measure, right? Except it was on the flintlock or whatever, and you'd kind of like move this little thing. It would dispense a little bit of the percussion powder, and then the hammer would come along and hit it, and you'd use that in lieu of flint. So it was a more dependable version of flintlock. But it wasn't really a percussion cap until later when he decided, oh, if I put these things in a little disposable little cup, then it's a thing. So, yeah, anyway, I'm over explaining it, but it was one of the ones that was not that interesting. Plus he's from Scotland and he's a reverend. So he just wanted to go hunting and he was sick of like making a bunch of noise and the birds would get away. So it wasn't like he was a gun inventor and spent all his days making guns. He just did this one thing and it just happened to be, I guess, pivotal. But I guess that's part of the history, part of the fun. Alexander Henry, the Martini Henry, what did he invent? Rifling, and he went around basically being kind of like our Berdan, except in England or in Scotland or whatever. I don't know what all these things are. I'd have to have Rick or maybe Angelina come in and explain to me what all these things are that Henry did. But he's some sort of Queen's volunteer foot. Like, they don't have cavalry, they have feet or foot. I don't know, it's weird. So it's our words, but said in a weird way, so it's hard to research that. Then we got Berdan, we just talked about him. Quackenbush is the next guy. He's another air rifle guy. He invented the first air rifle in, 1876? Not air rifle, but air pistol. Actually, I thought I had it out here a minute ago. It looks like this. How crazy is that? So in 1876 or whatever it was.
Looks like a space gun.
Yeah, looks like some kind of ray gun or whatever. And so we'll be doing that guy next. Then we got Karl Walther, German. I don't know anything about him, so he seemed kind of interesting. And I did not know he was born in 1858. So Walther's been around for a little while. What I found interesting is, you guys happen to go by Walther? Who was here in SHOT Show? Just Clover. Did you happen to go by the Walther booth at SHOT Show and pay attention to it at all?
No, I did not.
You know, Walther's not necessarily the biggest company or the most boisterous or whatever, but, you know, they're consistent. They've been around since 1908 or something. So what's cool is they are proud of their history, and it's a family business. So they've got their family history is pretty cool, documented, pretty cool. There's a couple of booths that take pride in their story, and I think realize that it's worth letting people know about their story. So like Leatherman is a great example. Like on the side of their booth, instead of just being wasted walls of the outside of their booth, or maybe a poster, sometimes they'll put up a giant poster to, you know, use up all that real estate on the outside walls of a booth. Leatherman will put their history. So as you're walking down the hallway next to their huge booth at a show, you know, instead of just walking past nothing, you're walking past their history. You're walking down a timeline, and Walther does the same thing where you can see all their different inventions and stuff. So very easy to get the history of Walther, and I think because of that I included it. It's not necessarily a gun I like or anything. I guess it's the James Bond gun, I guess, right? But anyway, so that's why I threw it in there. But I haven't had anybody, well, I haven't really shown the list to anybody, but I don't think anybody's going to complain about Walther in there. Nambu, 1869, another old guy, and well, got to have for one, it was the gun that Ruger built his off of, right? Plus, it's a pretty recognizable World War II gun. Definitely wanted to include more than just U.S. manufacturers. Plus, we don't have that many. Well, maybe I could have probably done a deck if I really tried, but we would have had a lot of small little manufacturers in there if it was all U.S. And now I'm wondering if I should have made it all U.S. Anyway, so Nambu. Then we got Makarov, obviously. Galil. I don't know if that's obviously or not, but I figured the Galil's a pretty good, pretty recognizable gun. And another modern example. They didn't want this to seem like all olden days of yore type of shit. Like there's not innovation still happening. Same concept for Gall, except how the hell am I going to do this and not have an Uzi in there, right? It's got to have an Uzi. Glock, obviously. Kellgren, I don't know. This one I think might be debatable. Somebody might be upset by this one, but I've met the man. I really respect him. I think he's a heck of a cool dude. He's not Browning or anything, but as far as plastics go, it's only been Glock. There's Glock and Kellgren, and when you look at Glock being born in 29, him being born in 43, well, I guess they're probably just a few years older, but I can't think of who else in this country was working with plastics. Some of the Ring of Fire guys were doing plastics. I'm sure some of the people in Florida that were dealing with the Saturday Special stuff coming in from there played with plastics a little bit, but these are the guys that took it right to the next level. And like it or love it, plastic stuff's here to stay.
Well, you had Remington with the nylon stuff and all back in the day, but that wasn't a huge success with that either.
It kind of was, but yeah, definitely different. But yeah, interesting. But yeah, that's definitely wasn't the first plastics, but it was the first, like, let's just make a gun out of plastic and add some metal to it.
Right.
Kind of concept or kind of design from the start.
Yeah, theirs was more of more of the polymer stock. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like here, let's
synthetic
use
stock.
Wood.
Yeah, it was like a synthetic stock option rather than polymer as a concept for the entire frame.
But as far as I know, the nylon 7, I mean, everything about that is neat. I mean, if you like DuPont or hate DuPont, it's just neat how they were coming up with plastics, and the nylon 7 is the name of the plastic, right? It's the name of that particular polymer, and just neat how they were able to, just develop stuff so quickly. Then, anyway, I think they're neat too because the green ones are really cool looking. The kind of deep swirled green. I've had a chance to see a couple of those, and they're just neat. Bob from Tucson Guns was a big fan of those guns, so he would grab one whenever they came around. Somebody'd bring one in. More than likely, he was going to buy it from them. So I got to see all the different versions of it, and not intentionally, but through osmosis, I became a fan of them, I guess.
Yeah.
But they're solid. They're just fun little guns. They work and they're neat. They're like a BB gun, but they're not. And they're from a time when you could just run around with a little 22 and nobody had a fit about it.
Yeah, and some of them bring pretty good money.
Oh, tons of money. That's the other thing, is they're super collectible now.
AG, H&K actually had the first polymer pistol, and it was released in, I believe, the late 70s, early 80s.
It was the HK VP70Z, and I don't think it was the first polymer pistol, but it was the first polymer striker-fired pistol, and it was released in 1970.
Yeah, but it was not marketed very well, and it didn't sell very well.
Well, hold on. It was full auto, so that's one thing against it, and they can't sell it commercially that way. It's HK. They don't like customers anyway. But I think it was the first production polymer. Like, it was the first gun you could buy that was polymer. It was before the Glocks and everything.
Right.
Yeah, the semi-auto model was basically like if you took a double stack high point with crappier sights and then put an 18-pound trigger in it, that'd pretty much be it. It's like the coolest piece of crap gun I've ever wanted.
Yeah, it's like a really bad old car. Like,
I want one so bad.
Ugly, but it's neat. So then we get Axtiskin. I don't know how to say his name. So that's the guy that invented the AA-12. He also did some other cool stuff, sub-caliber inserts for guns and just neat stuff. He hung out with Ingram and the guy who invented the suppressor for the Mac. They all worked at MAC together, Military Arms Corporation. So cool dude. Never met him, but I have had some experience with the people that developed the AA-12, so that was like kind of cool. So I definitely wanted to put that in there. And again, it's to keep the modern stuff going because there's new development. In fact, I probably should have put 3D printer guy in here. Probably could have put him in here. All right, so next we get to diamonds, bunch of Europeans and stuff. Puckle, because again, we want to have that in there for the people who hate the second and our rights, and want to suggest that the founders only wrote that stuff for the tech at the time. Then we got Mauser. There's two Mausers. I think that's kind of greedy of them, but both of them are involved in the gun, I guess, right? So I gotta use both of them, I guess. And then they were born on both sides of Craig, so I had to put Craig in there. I don't know so much about these, so I'll be interested when people jump in. Hopefully, make those easier to research, because I suspect there's a ton of stuff written about each of these guys, right? Fairly popular guns. So I'm guessing it's going to be difficult. It's going to be like the Ruger. It was a very difficult card to do because he's got a billion guns I could take pictures of, and he's got paragraphs and paragraphs of interesting stuff to write about. So these might be a bit of a challenge. Then we got Maxim, the machine gun Maxim, the real Maxim. That guy's interesting. The question is, do we put the time travel part on there? That'd be the question. Then we got Mosin. And I don't think I got Nagant. I just got Mosin because I ran out of space. And what did Nagant do? I think Mosin just made the magazine.
I thought Nagant only made the trigger guard, and it was known as a Mosin.
Oh, hell no. There was a couple. I mean, they definitely teamed up in different ways or whatever, but I know that he made more than just the trigger guard. I think he made like the gun, and Mosin only brought, I don't know. But anyway, so there's a Mosin and a Nagant. I only put Mosin in here. We'll give Nagant a little credit. And I was thinking about, since I do have some honorable mentions over here, people that have added since the list and got shuffled out of the list, I'll probably need to put Nagant there. And then I was thinking about just doing a supplement set of extra cards or something, and I don't know, use them as like trading cards or something. So that's Mosin. Then we got Arasaka something, or what's his name, but because obviously the Arasaka, but I think that's interesting because it's his first name. Usually guns are named after their last names. Is that a Japanese thing? Is that their first name, their last name, or something? I don't know. Then we got
I don't think that's a Japanese custom, because like samurai swords and stuff, those are usually last names of the family, that make them. So I don't see why they would change it for firearms. It's a weapon as well, unless maybe it's a different type of weapon, maybe. I'm not sure.
No idea. Rude to get a text in the middle of a live thing. It says the campaign just jumped again, so let's take a look. Maybe Japan jumped in. It's nighttime in Japan. 127, 50-56, 202%. Very cool. Still got an hour left, it says. So something, yeah, right about an hour. All right, so next is Hugo Schmeiser, the Sturmgewehr. Put him in there. So then we get the Garand, who's the Canadian who invented the Garand. And he's way over here. So all the other U.S. guns are up here, and then the Garand's over here. So that's the one weird thing about the way I had to set it up, but I just didn't want to have one Canadian up here in all of our U.S. stuff. Call me a racist. So the Garand's stuck over here in the diamonds with all the weird foreign guns, but that would keep the foreign guns in line, I suppose. Then we got Simonoff, your SKS. We got Mikhail Margolin. So Patriot doesn't get the answer, but does anybody know who we're talking about here? A Russian gun designer, Mikhail Margolin. No. So this is a guy that was a guy minding his business. What happened? What war was it? How old is he? They don't have his info in here. It's some war, though. He went to some war, got knocked on the head and went blind, and then became a gun designer and got frustrated not being able to describe the people. He learned all about gun design after he went blind, and then was a little bit frustrated because he couldn't get his ideas across to people because he couldn't draw. And something crossed paths, he got into clay, modeling clay, and then boom, that worked for him. He was able to start modeling his designs and his ideas, and that turned into a very successful 22 pistol that the Russians took to some Olympics and kicked the shit out of everybody at the Olympics with this pistol. And he became a Soviet hero, and he's a blind firearms manufacturer, firearms inventor. So thanks to Patriot for letting us know about that one. And I booted the Set Me guy and stuck him in there. So I think that's pretty cool. And he created the gun and designed the gun and everything after he was blind. All right, so then we got Dragunov, who was not blind, but he made the SVD. And then we got Kalashnikov, who was the ultimate, the opposite of Browning.
Hey, G, I sent you a link to a Wikipedia page of a guy that, whether you want to use him or not, are interested, but might want to look him up too. Ferdinand Mannlicher.
Is this some kind of joke? Mannlicher?
Nope. No, I have a rifle that's a Mannlicher rifle. He was from Austria-Hungary. He invented the N-block clip and a bunch of other stuff. He was actually a pretty cool to look up. He was he worked with Otto Schoenauer, who eventually became Steyr, working for Steyr.
Yeah, I didn't get quite a few. I don't have anything from Beretta in here. I think that was a big miss because that's one of the oldest companies on the planet. A lot of the firearms manufacturers like Tula and Ishmash and stuff that are older that were making swords, and then they made cannons, and then they made barrels, and then they made, Kalashnikovs, and then they made cranks and bayonets and everything else. So those were Soviet factories, state factories. Beretta's been a company the whole time, starting with swords and barrel and cannons and barrels and everything else and making Berettas. And I think it's been a family company that whole time too, right? So kind of an interesting.
Yep, it's still family privately owned.
Yeah, so that's super interesting and obviously a big miss, but I'm American, so
It sounded like to me you almost got enough left over to do another deck here later on.
For sure. So let's talk about other decks. This one isn't quite over, but this hopefully is just the beginning of a series. So I'm calling it the first in the 2A history deck. So you're right. I probably could, now that we're thinking about it, at least do a supplement. Like I was thinking maybe do another suit. So there's, your spades and your hearts and your diamonds and your clubs or whatever. But I could do like a bullseye or head stamp or something as a suit and just do a supplement. That would give me 13 more, right? So I could do something like that and just have a supplement suit at some point with the inventors, or we've got Fine 52. I would like to include people like Raven, Jennings. Let's see who I got in here. This was a super, I really, really, really wanted to include this guy, the guy Jules van Langenhoven, right? The Daisy VL, so the dieseling non-firearm that the ATF called a firearm. So Daisy, the air rifle company, minding their business, and this guy Jules van Langenhoven comes along and says, hey, what if we take a little lead cup, right? A 22 caliber lead pellet, they have that little cup in the back, and let's put some propellant into that little cup. And instead of having a primer or anything, let's just use a regular BB gun. We'll compress the air, push it through the little valve. That'll diesel the air, right? It'll compress the air. It'll push the air through that little valve. It'll turn into a little vortex and create heat. And that heat will be enough to light the propellant and propel that projectile out the barrel. There was no ignition, so it's primitive ignition, technically. There was no primer, in other words. So, and there was no cartridge. So according to the definitions of firearms, it was just a thing, right? ATF comes along and says, no, it's a gun. Well, I thought that was neat, and I think that would be a cool dude to include in here. However, I can't find anything about the guy, where he's from. I think he's from Wisconsin or something, but I don't know. Nothing about his dates or his life or anything. No picture other than his name, Jules van Langenhoven. Anyway, I really thought that would have been a cool dude to include, but I'm going to put a little asterisk there for a second. We'll get back to that asterisk. Then we got Tom Deeb, who is the guy who created the High Point. And again, there's lots of, there's Bauer, there's Jerry Baker, Barber, whatever, the guy from Freedom Arms. I've met him. There's Sandy, guy who runs North American Arms. I guess he didn't invent anything, but he's a manufacturer. Well, there's a bunch of people that are modern, so maybe there's enough for a whole nother day. We got Hudson Maxim, so the brother or the uncle, depending on which Maxim you're thinking of, but he's the guy that invented smokeless powder in this country. Then we got Clarence Hamilton, who is the guy that created Daisy. He started out as a windmill salesman. Stevens, so we have Savage up there, and we've got Weatherby, but we don't have Stevens. What does Stevens do? 22 long rifle, right? Invented the 22 long rifle. Savage eventually bought Stevens, so it's kind of a sub company now, but anyway, that would have been a neat person to include. I think I heard somewhere that this guy invented the recoilless rifle, so I didn't want to get too far into other sidearm or other small arms, but you know, potentially you've got other types of firearms in there. You know, Browning for sure invented things much larger than handguns. And then this Ludwig Borgemer is the guy I pulled for the blind guy, and this is the guy who invented the Setme, and I figured that was just in there for Night Strike, and what's he gonna do? I keep giving him $1 a month, and GunTube still isn't perfect, so I pulled this at me. All right, so asterisk. There's a potential for an entire deck, I think, of ammunition. So these are firearms inventors. Let's talk ammunition. I guess you could say some of these things, like the percussion cap and the Berdan primer, are more ammunition. These guys also make guns, though. But yeah, you start getting into cartridges and the calibers and the types of projectiles and cases and stuff. I think there could be potentially a whole nother one for an ammunition deck.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Maybe focus it on the ammunition itself instead of the person, and say, here's, you know, I could do what old ammo for one suit, military ammo for one suit, hunting ammo for one suit, specialty ammo. I mean, I think you could even do more than a deck, really, when you start talking ammo.
Law enforcement ammo, like
Yeah.
where the 9mm was used in Florida in a gun shootout with the FBI, and then they ended up going to the 10mm, then the 40 caliber.
Yeah, like each caliber's got its own story, so probably something to do there. I'd like to do a deck of, I don't know what to call it, I guess the evolution of technique, because I hate to just call it training, because it starts out with the guys that created the National Rifle Association. They weren't happy with the performance of the soldiers. You get to guys like, well, so that one, I forget who the two guys are that created the NRA, but one of them went out to write a book about how to be a rifleman or whatever, how to you know, to actually write down techniques and things to be good at shooting. You know, it had to start somewhere, and I think that's one of the places it started. But then over the years, people have developed that. So like the guy we were just talking about, Berdan, you know, him taking his guys out and drilling them instead of just sitting around, you know, on off time or whatever. I'm sure that stuff, you know, is what developed what we call firearms training today, or doctrine, or whatever we call, like, you know, the established whatever methods. So anyway, you've got different eras of that stuff, you know, as technology changes, training changes. So you've got that original, let's just come up with the concept of actually shooting with an intent to get better at shooting. So if we ever have to do this for war again, we're better at it. And then you get to, I guess, World War I. I never really thought about what came out of World War I. And that's when they were standing there with one hand in their pocket, right? Sticking their one arm way out to shoot their pistols, doing all kinds of weird chicken wing stuff with their rifles to shoot. And, you know, some of that comes from rifles that were, what, fucking 4 feet long and weighed 12 pounds. You know, it's a little bit different than a 26-inch long plastic and aluminum gun that has a bolt carrier that's 30% of its whole weight. moving between your cheek and your shoulder. So anyway, so you get your World War I techniques, you get your World War II, and then it goes nuts because everybody comes home from World War II and actually starts sharing their information, and you get your gun sight, and you get your well, all your instructors that were from that era, and then you get your military training that evolves, and then when those guys start to retire, they come out and start training, and then you get your modern group, what do we call your like instructor cadre that exists today. So I think there could be an interesting deck in just the development of like application of shooting. And I'm missing stuff like competition shooting. I know I'm missing hunting because I don't hunt anywhere near as much as some people. So I think there's something to be, some sort of a deck there for like that development of technique or something like that. And again, to bring some of these people out of the archives. I mean, they're there, but they're not brought up. I mean, part of the thing that we're doing this for, when we look at the decks, right? We look at the cards, I should say. One of the things that are in there is their birth date and their date of death, right? So we have, one of my projects is the guncalendars.com, where we have a calendar, basically, just a calendar, except we put things like, today's the day that Pedersen was born. So now people can remember, hey, this is the day where that guy who made that thing that turned 30 caliber bolt action World War I gun into a semi-auto pistol caliber assault rifle almost. So that's the kind of thing that keeps the knowledge out there and available for people, keeps it on their mind, so that they can, I don't know, hopefully develop projects from this. Anyway, so that's part of the overall plan here, is to develop some of our other online resources, so that we're not just doing this for one thing and it's over. So hopefully there'll be some stuff that sticks around from it. Anyway, so can you imagine, after we do these 52, that's going to be 52 more items in the calendar. If we start talking about when people who are in the development of, like I say, the application of firearms and shooting. We talked about the ammo, and there's another one. It seems like I've been talking for a while, but I do have what's my other deck? Oh, the other deck is the evolution of the sports. So I'm not a sporting guy. I mean, I've gone to a couple of shooting matches. I like the GSSF one because it's really low stress and it's easy to deal with. I like IDPA because it's, for me, it seems realistic to normal carry type of situations or whatever. But I know there's a lot of firearms competition stuff out there. Everything from like what Clover's involved with the kids and the 4-H and that kind of organized stuff to the, just tons. So anyway, as I was doing the 2A history project, I started to discover this stuff. And if you think about it, I never thought about it before. At one point, there wasn't even a shotgun, right? Then shotguns were invented. Probably took people 15 minutes to start having competitions with their shotguns. So it was like, there's an actual date, whatever it is, like 1908 or whatever it was. That's when they invented trap. Like, boom, it was invented one day. So there couldn't have never been any kind of organized trap shooting before that, because they only invented it on that day. So then you get, you start looking at that in history, and it's super interesting because we've had basically waves of anti-gun pressure as a free country, right? And those haven't always come from a antagonist. They come from different places. And one of the pushes was against hunting, and other pushes have been against military stuff. Other pushes have been against carrying for self-defense, and those are most recent. So as we kind of look at the development of these shooting sports, that's super interesting. So like I say, it kind of developed, or I discovered it as I was building the 2A history thing, and I was impressed by how much I'm not aware of how much that influences not just the development of tech, I guess, or guns itself, the technology of guns, but also the legal side of it. And anyway, so I think there's a lot to a whole nother deck potentially in the like the history of the various types of sporting stuff. And then I guess there's probably hunting stuff that, again, I'm not even thinking about, but going back to Davy Crockett and stuff, right? And all the conservation stuff, some of the game hunters and Buffalo Bill and things like that.
Yeah, that gets into, if you ever get into cartridges, that's going to lead you. I think the cartridge probably would be best to go with the cartridge deck, and then go down something with the hunting after that, because when you start getting into the cartridge stuff, that's where a lot of your hunters, they developed this cartridge. They were, big game
because
hunters.
of hunting. Exactly.
Right. So then that's kind of a twofer when you start going down that road. And on the cartridges thing, I just pulled out my Cartridges of the World book here, and it would be super easy to put together a cartridge deck. Just be a matter of picking which cartridges were the most interesting.
Yeah, it would be the discrimination. It'd be the toughest part, is figuring out who gets to play.
Because all the information is there as to it doesn't give dates of the guy in the picture, birth and death and pictures, but the information is there. So.
And that's actually 90%. Well, not 90%, but it's a good chunk of it is having a structure, because then the internet is easy.
Yeah, I mean, it does in this book. As long as it gives a name, you can Google that name a lot of times and easily get a birth, death, and picture. So.
Well, yeah, and that's what we were finding is really neat. Like we'll go after somebody who's new on the list, and having never searched for them before, you always almost always have a Wikipedia page. But then there's books. Now there's Google Books or whatever that thing's called, where you search for the guy's name and it's listed, 16 times in a book. They'll give you the paragraph or even the chapter that he's mentioned in some giant book that is like what you're talking about, Cartridges of the World or something. Maybe there's 3 paragraphs about somebody. Boom, here it is from Google right there. And you're only getting the pieces you need from that book. So it's really ideal. Like you say, if you've got the kind of guide there to where to point, the internet that's half the fun, is finding the researching it on the internet.
Right. Yeah.
Tata's is saying, I think an AR-15 history deck, AK history deck would be good. So yeah.
Oh, and then another one, I'm sitting here, I'm just looking at several books on the shelf, right? I've got the Ammo Encyclopedia. That's another one. I've got a standard catalog of Smith & Wesson. So, I mean, you could do like a Smith & Wesson deck. And history of Smith & Wesson. You could go through that. There's just, it's endless, right?
Hopefully. Well, hopefully, because what I'm thinking is, I doubt I'll stick with the card theme too often, because it's not very many things that are complete where you can get from A to Z. Because look, and I got a couple of things going on. So the AK deck only was 4 countries. There's 16 countries that made AKs plus. So that would have really been the silhouette, the first deck, the AK silhouettes needed to be a 3-deck set. I just didn't know. That was my first experience doing a project, and I had already done a unsuccessful one on Kickstarter. So that was my second attempt at that deck, and just, novice at ordering. I went through Bicycle with a 2,500 deck minimum order, 2,500 decks of cards. Just think about the shipping. 2,500 decks of cards are basically blocks of wood, because cards are a bunch of paper, stuck together with plastic. So you're basically shipping 2,500 pieces of wood. My shipping place almost sent me, packing when they got that delivered. They were not happy with that. Anyhow, that would have been a more than one deck. The last one, the Old West guns, that could have been easily 2 decks easily. I just had to pick random cards there. So anyway, it doesn't work really good having the restriction of 52. So what I'm really thinking of, if people are interested, is I might go to a little bit larger form factor, like the olden days when we would get those cards in the mail as kids. We would get the things that were more like postcard size.
Yeah, or even like an Uno card. Some of the Uno cards and things like that are bigger.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. So it's not
high visibility or something, maybe they call it. I don't know. Something like that.
So just, exactly. Like the large
old maid cards. I can remember like old maid and stuff like that being larger.
Or flash card. Yeah. So basically an index card size instead of a playing card size. But it's something manageable, but still small. But anyway, get rid of the suits on there, and then just maybe organize them by like the country, put a border around it for whatever country. And I'm guessing most people know what I'm talking about, those like monthly card things we used to get. Anyway, I might do them as supplemental things. So we do a batch of them. I think they do them in increments, usually like a dozen. So 12 or 24 or 48 or whatever, you know, just come up with some number and just do a small run. As long as we're not trying to do them in fancy boxes and make it an actual presentation type of thing. If it's just get some, I should be able to do that on the kind of regular. And we'll see what kind of people might be interested in something like that. It's not going to.
So you're saying do them kind of like, and I don't know how many people would remember this or whatever, but kind of like the recipe cards you used to get. I know my mom, grandma used to get those, you know, where they got every month they signed up for the club and then got sent like 3 recipe cards, and they had these boxes like on top of boxes, and they were all like, oh goodness.
That's probably sure is my
so and you know, like the meats were organized by a certain color, and then the vegetables were a certain color or something. I don't remember how it was broken up, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would get them when I was a kid. I had a set that was like critters, and I'm pretty sure we were talking about it one time.
Oh yeah, I remember those, the zoo animals and stuff.
Yeah, the zoo book cards.
You get like a fish, and you get a reptile, and you get like a mammal, and so you'd get this little plastic thing that you put them in, and yeah, you'd get your like new whale or something, and you'd get your starfish, and then you'd go stick it in there, and you'd figure out how you wanted to sort them, and you'd look at all the pictures, and then you'd read them, and then you'd put them away. So we might do something like that. We might make it a little bit different. I'm thinking there's some potential here. Okay, so we're all up to speed now. We might be doing something where it's just like a trading card, but we could still have fun with it. Now, this deck of cards here, I'm trying to see if I've got a picture. You guys get the idea that each of these cards has a different inventor on it and then his stuff. Well, you could play war in a whole different way with this deck, right? You just ignore the actual playing card pips and you just go to war with the inventor. You know, so if it's like Browning versus anybody, Browning wins. If it's like, you know, Maxim versus, I don't know, Remington, now that might be an interesting discussion. So it might be the kind of thing where you could have some sort of not quite a war. What is that game called? The words of something of destiny. There's that card game that's all words, like you put down words, and it's kind of like a Mad Libs kind of a game. I guess the Instagram's going to end. Thanks for joining us. Wow, I got that right in time. Cards Against Humanity, that game. 66 people watching on Instagram today. So something like Cards Against Humanity, except without being as rigid, but basically you just have a fun war game. That's all I'm saying. You know, put up Thompson versus, I don't know, Colt or something, and then just kind of try to figure out who would have won that war.
So the campaign grew, I see.
Did it?
204 now.
It's impressing me. It's hitting the goals and going right on past. That means there's a lot of interest out there.
204. So 128 now.
Sorry, I'm reading about 3 different things on my phone. I think it'll stay on. It's overheating, but the battery's still good. I'll shut it down. It just ended the Instagram thing that usually cooks it.
40 minutes left.
Yeah.
What
I was going to say, yeah, I appreciate that, Gary, because what I think is neat too is when people go through this, because they keep these on Instagram. If you go click on, you know, AK-47, well, I guess AK-47 wasn't here, but if you type in, you know, something that gun stuff related or whatever, you're going to see the campaigns that ended, and this will always be there as a campaign that got 200 and something % of its goal. So exactly, hopefully, you know, I set these things. I didn't set this one at like the minimum. I set it at 2,500. I think there was some kind of rhyme or reason to my theory there. It was basically to try not to lose any money. But you know, I would rather put it at like 500, because then we'd be at what, 1,000% of the goal. But then there's that perception, oh, they've already reached their $500, they're done. I think that happened to me one time with the I forget which one. There was a little campaign I did like that, and I'm like, oh, I'll just put a little. I think it was the Gun Channel's 4th year rebottle. I'm like, I'll just put a $500 thing on this, and we'll get the apps with this. And I think people went, oh, you got this 500. Well, let's wait. Let's stay tuned for the apps. I should have put it at more like what, the $3.5 grand that the apps would have cost. But so I put it at 2,500. So you know, that now that we got to the 5, it's going to look cool that it's at 200%. Because a lot of people don't look at the money; they look at that percent. That gives, like Gary's saying, an idea of how many people are actually interested in this thing. And maybe it'll encourage somebody in the future to go, "Hey, I'm going to do a gun one too." Those things sold; they're stupid. I can do something better than that.
Right. Yep. Capitalism.
Of course, it says a lot about the economy too, that people feel like they have, the free money to go out and spend on things like this. So there's interest in firearms, and the economy is good enough that people have a little bit of free capital to spend on stuff like that too.
That's a real good point. So thanks, Trump.
Yep, that's where I was going with that.
Pink says he's running off of phone internet at the moment, but next week he gets his good internet. So.
Yay. So, yeah, sweet.
I'm just reading some of the comments around. We got a ton of new people, obviously, because Yankee did his crazy, what do you call it? Like,
I haven't seen just a whole lot out in the chats and stuff. I've seen a few, but
I want to call it a, it wasn't
promotion?
A drive. No, it's more like the thing for Jerry's telethon. It seemed like a
gun websites-a-thon.
Yeah. No, it was a gun channels-a-thon, hopefully. But, yeah, that was crazy. So we've been getting just tons. I think we got, I haven't been monitoring it, but when I first looked, it was like 33 new members. I'm sure it's a lot more than that by now.
Yeah, because I was there, and there was donations all over the place, and there was a lot of people in there. Because there was only one guy who put in more money than me, but then it was pretty busy.
And normally I'd say that's crazy because YouTube, horrible YouTube that hates us, is gobbling up 33% of that. But Yankee's crazy enough to match all that. So,
Oh, Yankees matching it? Yankees match?
Yeah. So let's say that somebody donated $10. YouTube's like, thanks. Let me have $3.33 of that real quick, and they give Yankee $6.66. Because that's how they roll. And then Yankee said he's going to throw the $3.33 back in there to make it, $10 stolen to gun channels like you wanted. So, that's big of him, and that's cool. But like I say, normally I'd be like, hey, do it any other way besides
yeah, no kidding.
What do they call them things? Super chats. But Yankee said that the best way to get money to somebody, well, the best way technically is PayPal, because that's one merchant, or whatever you want to call one middleman. That's not the easiest way for everybody. It's probably the best way for somebody who's got the smaller side of the followers, because it's not unmanageable. When you've got a lot of PayPal transactions, PayPal, for example, when somebody buys something or whatever you call it, when they do the yearly thing on gun channels, it comes up and it charges $12. It's going to say, to me, it's going to say something to the effect of so-and-so thing activated, triggered or something, and then it's going to apply it. And then depending on if everything's still the same after a year, if everything goes according to plan, it'll give me a third one that says applied. So I'm going to have 3 interactions that show up on my feed for that $12. And that's just, once, and then 1 year later, that'll happen again. So it'll just end up making just garbage. And when I put that into my tax software, it's like just pulling all this garbage out.
Well,
and anyway, so it'll get lost when somebody.
There's something to be said too with the super chat. It's kind of like the impulse items at the checkout. It's just so easy to do. It's there. It's in your face. And for people that follow you on a regular basis, they're going to buy swag. They're going to become a patron. You know what I'm saying? They know that it's not wise to just dump money into a super chat. There's other ways to do it. So, there's this, I guess what I'm saying is that's sort of the saving grace a little bit, is that most of that are your people that are kind of doing it on impulse.
Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of it was like the little just playing, having fun, saying,
Yeah, the money I threw in there, I was just playing around. you know, it's
just
why not?
make Yankee say it kind of thing, or
Yeah,
make fun of
right.
Matt not being able to work his or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
But hopefully, before too long, Night Strike will have something working over on GunTube, so we can still play with that concept and do it over on GunTube, where Night Strike makes the money.
Yeah,
And
that would be neat.
it won't be before too long for all that happens.
I would be on board for that. That would be cool.
All right. Well, I'm super stoked about the U.S. stuff. Of course, it changes all my numbers up because my numbers were for not minimum, but small orders. What do you call like a non-wholesale order? You know, just like a regular custom, not a, what do you call like a regular retail order, I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you get to larger numbers, then everything just changes. So I'm going to have to figure out, and then hopefully I didn't get screwed, because when you're only dealing with a retail place, they're probably just printing them on a printer. So you get, like when I do the demo or the prototype decks, I mean, they're probably just printing out on some printer, right? And cutting them out with a freaking, what am I trying to say, paper cutter or something. You know, they're not fancy or anything. So it might take longer. Now that I'm thinking about it, I didn't think about. I have asked them the prices and stuff, but I didn't ask them like, when can we get into the line? Hopefully there won't be any problem. But like I said, I was just say I haven't had a chance to really dig into the price numbers or the numbers and the whatever. I don't even know what the total is yet. I haven't been able to count the decks or whatever, but to get the numbers off of the Texas place. So anyway, hopefully we'll have some room in here to have a little more fun with the project too. I don't want to count chickens before they're hatched, but yeah, it's been a very successful campaign, so I'm gonna have some fun with this one for sure. Cool. And hopefully it kind of, if I can make it, I'm guessing I'm still feeling out the printer, right? I don't know if I'm pissing off the printer or if I'm no big deal to the printer doing these little gigs. But I'm hoping that if I can impress him with the ease and efficiency of this one, that he won't be reluctant with the minimum orders in the future. So I can do smaller, more, I guess, uninteresting things that don't have this mass appeal, so that we can, you know, create things that are cooler. I think cooler than, I don't know. I mean, I guess if I did a color AK deck, that might have enough appeal to go big again. But I kind of want to do the Second Amendment advocates to get that for gun rights policy. Just think of it. Well, I guess it'd be neat to have those printed here. And like I say, these guys won't just print me prototype deck or whatever. That's not even a thing they do. So hopefully it's a step towards getting into that with them. Of course, I don't know. I'm dealing with emails, so it might be great. Let's see. Oh, they're talking about reloading out here. I'm surprised that you said should do a reloading deck. Just everyone could be a different press, and a different ratio of powder, a different camphor, a whole suit of trickle chargers, trickle. All right, well, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 people, and I got dead air. Luckily, there's only half an hour left. I guess we'll just go to.
I'm sorry. I just, like I said, I'm listening, and I just don't really know. I got my kid talking and stuff, so I'm trying not to, mess up the chat.
No worries. Are you still at the place?
No, we just got home, but we're watching a movie, and he talks.
Another thing you could do, you have 52 cards. You could almost do like a history of gun rights in each state. That would give you 50 cards right there.
That's super cool. Yeah. I've actually got a project similar to that in mind that's already in the works. So that one will be probably the next one. And like I said, I'm super stoked that I've got I don't want to count my chickens before they're hatched because I'm going to jinx myself here. But if I can, like I say, my goal is to get, I hate to throw any amount of money to overseas if I can help it. I don't mind 40, 50 bucks, but hundreds of bucks, thousands of bucks, no way. But if I can, I'm hoping that with this one, like I say, if I can just make this quick, efficient, find somebody in Texas who might be able to just pick them up like I did, so they don't even have to ship them or put them in any kind of box or anything, make it as easy for them as to deal with. Then anyway, yeah, I might have one coming up with something kind of similar to what you're talking about there, a little bit different. I don't want to give that one away. All right, well, any other questions about a campaign or about the written decks or about researching them or about any of these other aspects of it? I'm asking you guys and the people that are out there. Oh, let's see.
Well, then, like you were talking earlier, you said that you were going to do something maybe not quite 50, not like playing cards, but like maybe like those. When I was younger, we used to get these books, the wildlife cards, and they came in. You like had a little 3-ring binder, and you could put all the cards in the binder. But like it was like I don't know, it was like a 6x8 card. Would you ever consider something like that with like a little more information on different guns and stuff?
Yeah, we were kind of talking about that a minute ago. That's exactly what I'm thinking going forward, because the cards part is novel, I guess, but it also takes up real estate, and yeah, it's just not necessary. I don't know how many people are going to play cards with them, really. So, and limited to 52.
I don't actually play cards with them. I just keep them around because I like them, like to look at them. I don't really ever use them for playing cards.
Yeah, so I don't use my decks either.
I know you're big into the Ring of Fire thing, G. How many different Ring of Fire guns are there? Is there enough for a deck?
Oh, definitely. And it would be even better because you've seen the video I did, right? Where I basically kind of did like a PowerPoint or like a flow chart almost, because that's how it lays out, right? Raven and whatnot. So better than a deck of cards. I think it'd be neat to build my flow chart so that you could lay it down just like that.
A deck of your flow chart, basically.
Yeah, seriously.
Like a puzzle?
I guess like a flow chart, So basically, think of it. Raven comes from the center, and that was the granddad. He invented a 25 ACP Raven, right? And that's based off of Browning's pocket Browning, except made out of Zamek, and that way his aviation factory could turn out these guns and not go through a bunch of tooling and go through a bunch of bits and stuff. It was easier on the metal, or the metal was easier on the machinery. So he figures out how to make that gun, and he's successful with it for many years. And then his son makes a 22 version of it, a little smaller gun called the Jennings. So if you consider Raven at the center of the screen at the top, Jennings is over now to the right. And then a little while later, his daughter marries the factory superintendent or something, and they are now called Davis because she marries him, and she's now Davis, and they go off and make Davis arms. So now that's on the left side of Raven. So you've got Raven in the center, you've got his son became Jennings to the right, and you've got Davis over to the left. So Davis took the 25 ACP gun that the dad or the grandpa started with, and they upsized it to 32 ACP and 380. So they are basically all kind of working harmoniously here with the same gun based off of Browning's design, made out of Zamek, made in basically the same way, very similar guns. Brother's making a 22, dad is making the 25, daughter is making the 32 and 380. Davis decides to make Remington style Derringer also, so they add that to their product line. So then that's these three connected parts at the top of the page. So then you get into the tree. Raven has one product change, or one change to their Raven ever, and then that becomes the next dot down from the center, and then Raven factory burns down many years later. It burns down many years later, comes back as Phoenix Arms. So now you're going from Raven to the model MP25, and then Raven burns down, and now you got Phoenix. So that's the main stock of the tree. That's the 25 ACP, and the Phoenix was making 25 ACPs originally. So that's the stock of the tree. So everything on the right side is Jennings. Jennings, the son gets in something happens with his wife. He's a horrible person. Jennings is not somebody to look up to. He's a horrible, horrible human being. He does something with his wife and has a domestic abuse thing. So he loses his FFL, or he's about to. It changes hands, and that Jennings becomes CalWestco, and then it becomes Brico. And his wife runs Brico. They build the guns, and Jennings, who can't have an FFL anymore, just distributes guns. So he's Jennings still, but it's now a distributor and not a manufacturer. So that keeps it interesting. So that's coming down the right side of the screen from Jennings to CalWestco to Brico. So then to follow down that one, years later, a 12-year-old babysitter's fiddling with a loaded gun, shoots the 7-year-old he's supposed to be babysitting in the neck. That 7-year-old is paralyzed. That creates a lawsuit for what, $4 or $8 million against Brico. Somehow it's the gun manufacturer's fault that this happened, that the parents left a loaded gun in the presence of a 12-year-old, and that was babysitting their kid. And that's the manufacturer's fault. California says, yep, it is. So you owe us $4 million. Nobody has that kind of money. They go out of business. The factory manager is Paul Jimenez, and he buys the factory tooling, moves eventually to Nevada, and that's Jimenez Arms. So if you go from Raven to the right to Jennings, you go down to CalWestco, you go down to Brico. Brico turns into Jimenez. So now you go back over to the daughter side, Davis. He has a brother that becomes Sedco. That's a gun that's identical to the Jennings 22. So the brother Jennings and the sister and everybody sue this guy, and he's gone. So Sedco lasts for like a minute, and that's a cool little gun that's hard to get. That's way over on the left, comes down from Davis. The next thing that comes down from Davis is, I forget the names of all these companies, but Davis, the guy who married the daughter of Jennings, he's an innovative guy. So he's one of the first guys to do polymer 45. I think it's called like an American or something. And then I think he only tries once or twice, but he can't get a 45 to run on a polymer frame yet, because they're doing it at little factories in California. And I think that's in reaction to Glock. I don't think it's like pre-Glock, but they're trying to do their affordable version of a polymer. So he tries that and fails, but those are companies that come down out of the Davis side. Davis gets sued out of existence and becomes Cobra. Cobra moves to Nevada. No, Cobra moves to Salt Lake City, and it's like Cobra Inc. now. So those are the branches coming down from the Davis side. So all the Davis lines and the Remington style Derringers and all their polymer stuff is all Cobra now. Then you come down from that original Raven branch, and you get one diversion from that main branch, and that is Sundance, and that's the nephew of Jennings, of George Jennings, the grandpa, and he decides to make Uncle's gun with a grip safety and a laser. So when you activate the grip safety, the laser goes on. So it's like a 25 ACP made out of Zamek with a grip safety that when you pull the grip safety, the laser goes on. So it's like the most obnoxiously inexpensive gun. There's no reason for it to even exist. It's the craziest like duality of all guns. So that gun exists for like 5 minutes and then it's gone. That's created like 20 minutes away from where Alan Anker lives. So anyway, that's pretty much the family tree. And then there's Lorson, who's an asshole, and he's kind of like an extra blip. He comes out of the Jennings side because he went to school with Jennings. He went to high school with him, but otherwise he has no affiliation with the rest of the place. And then you've got AMT, who has no affiliation with it at all, except that they were in California, and a bunch of idiots who don't know anything about guns considered AMT part of the Ring of Fire for no reason. There's literally no connection with them. So if you've never seen that, that is like a flow chart. Imagine that on like PowerPoint 2012 when I was sitting around. And I went to the range on a Thursday. I had just bought my Phoenix Arms 22 off of this friend of mine. He had bought this thing when we worked at AOL, and I thought it was the bee's knees because I hadn't been shooting back that much back then. I had bought some, Y2K prep or whatever. You know, I had a bunch of SKSs and stuff for Y2K, but I just went old standard, you know, pre-1999. Your standards are like Rugers and lever actions and SKSs and ammo, right?
Yeah,
So he buys this little Phoenix Arms 2-barrel 22 thing, and I thought it was ridiculous and kind of neat, but dumb. You know, you could tell it was cheap, but whatever. So anyway, he bought it, and he was always holding it over me. And then I finally bought it off him because he needed money. So I bought it off of him, and I was doing YouTube videos. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go do a YouTube video of this thing. So I got on a Thursday to the range, and I'm like, and I just ripped into it. I made a shitty video, and I was like, hold on. I got done. I'm editing the video at home, and I'm like, is this what I do now? Like I rip apart guns? Like I'm an anti-gunner? What the fuck? I did this horrible video where I'm like ripping on this gun. And that's when I went, nope, I'm not doing this anymore. This isn't my thing. I'm not here to just keep touting the same old shit that everybody else has said, right? So I started digging into it. I'm like, why is this gun like this? Because who the hell would make this gun? It had a safety, like a regular safety, right? A slide, like underneath the slide. It had a magazine disconnect. It had a chamber indicator, you know, which is dumb. And then it had another safety up on the slide. So there's two safeties, and you have to go through this ridiculous proprietary manual of arms to load and unload the thing that required the magazine to be both in and out. I mean, it was just a ridiculous, dangerous, and like I say, my review was like, what the hell? And it's not the gun's fault, and I didn't think the manufacturer was out to get anybody. You know, it didn't decide, hey, let's just see how many people we can hurt by making this horrible, like, intricate puzzle that's deadly. So I was like, what is all this? So I sat down that day and started, instead of finishing that video, I've never finished that video, I started researching what the hell this gun was. And I discovered there was one article that everything referred to, and that was a, what was it called, Nightline or something? It was a PBS show that was on back in the day. It wasn't Nightline. It was something that was like fairly, people respected it as like good journalism. And they would maybe like every couple of months they would be on, and they'd like look into something, and it would be like, oh, there's that PBS show, and everybody was like, ooh, it's going to be the hard-hitting, you know, investigative report on whatever it was. So they did that. Was it Hardline? What the fuck was the name of that show? You guys would remember it who are old, because it, like, you know, it was a big deal when it was on. Anyway, so they had this one show, this investigative show from PBS that dug into this Ring of Fire guns, right? So I started to figure out what these Ring of Fire guns were, figured out who named them the Ring of Fire guns, and then I figured out that every single thing in this PBS referred to one article that was written years before. And it was she wasn't like Rolling Stone, she was something else, like some journal that, you know, was respected but leftish. And so she was so this whole PBS thing that pretty much everything on the internet referred to this one other article. So I'm like, huh, this is interesting. Almost everything you can easily find refers to this, and this exclusively refers to this. So basically all your information's coming from this one lady. So as I started to figure all this out, I was like, wow, this is, you know, I doubt anybody set this up to get us, but this is the way it is right now. So I started to look back, and this lady actually spent some time on the ground. She like went and met these people, and she did this whole like interesting, I guess, you know, what would you call it, like investigative expose, executive or like investigative report of this phenomenon. And she was kind of open-minded about it. Like, is this a conspiracy? Like, are these people all in collusion with each other, or whatever, collusion, and like trying to evade the laws? Or is it that they're being persecuted and they're just trying to do their job? You know, they're just trying to do what they, you know, provide a thing that people want. So it was kind of an interesting article, but of course the PBS one demonized it a bit. And then there's this Dr. fucking Winnemute, and he's still an asshole. So he's an emergency room doctor, and he's the guy that called him the Ring of Fire. And anyway, I started to figure out all about him and his role in it. He's a good 30% of the whole thing. And he's just an angry man who doesn't like guns and is convinced that guns are the problem. And he'll go literally any direction he can to prove that, and say anything he can. And he's the guy who figured out that, okay, if laws aren't working, let's go after the companies litigiously. And he's the guy that, I don't know if Clover got into that part of the book yet, but he's the guy that basically set up this scenario, like the T-ball, to where they got all excited. Oh, it's working. We got Brightco. We got Dave. We got Davis out of here. You know, it's working. We got the little Saturday night specials out. Let's go get Glock. And they went after Glock and they got their ass handed to them. It was awesome. They just got clobbered.
Yeah.
And anyway, so that guy's still angry about that shit. So anyway, I discovered all this stuff and it was amazing. So I basically opened up my PowerPoint, which is what I used for my videos back then. And I just started to accumulate data and it became one of my favorite videos. I don't know how long it is. It's like a half an hour. And it's basically a PowerPoint after PowerPoint. And I just took all the stuff I found on the internet and filed it all together. I found out that there's a forum for people that are interested in these old guns made out of Zamak. So I went over there and I'm like, you know, for a minute there, I was like, you know, they're a hero because I had just discovered all this stuff and I put it all together in this like half-hour video and it got some attention. I think I was still a pretty big channel back then. So yeah, that was a pretty neat, that's the time I look fondly of YouTube. So that was the fun part. I was making enough money off of just YouTube. I didn't even have to think. I was making a fucking video and I said, nope. And I just, for 3-4 days, I came up for air, like I think on Tuesday. And people were like, oh, where the hell have you been? And I'm like, you'll have to watch 30 minutes of video to figure it out. But that was the funnest time ever, just being able to jump in and dig into that.
Now
Frontline, thank you. That was the name of the show.
Where did you say Phoenix fell into that?
Phoenix Arms. So Raven is originally George Jennings.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Yeah. Originally, and for some reason I'm trying to think of it, but it is the grandpa Jennings, the main Jennings. He's an aerospace engineer, successful aerospace engineer. He has a friend that's a gun shop owner. 1968 Gun Control Act happens. His gun shop owner friend says, damn it, I was selling like 500 of these guns a week. Now where the hell am I going to do? So he develops the 25 ACP Raven. It only has one change since that first gun. That's the MP25. And then that factory burns down, and then that's Phoenix. So it comes back to life, and it's Phoenix. And then they make the same gun for a minute, and now they make that Phoenix, which is basically looks like a Jennings, but now it's a Phoenix.
That's what I was asking. Was it the same? Is it the same Phoenix as now?
Yes. So it's
that thing. That thing has like 45,000 safety features on it.
That's exactly the gun I was saying. I'm like, what the hell? It's got a magazine disconnect. It's got a frame safe.
Right.
Loaded chamber indicator, and then it's got a slide safety.
Mm-hmm.
Ridiculous.
Right. Yeah.
There's no possible way to use that gun with normal manipulation. Like you can't just check the mag. No, because the slide won't lock back. Literally, you load it with one round. You put one round in a magazine. You put that in the gun. You rack the slide. You now have a gun in the chamber, or I mean a bullet in the chamber and an empty magazine, right? If you pull the magazine and try to check that, what's going to happen? Nothing. It's locked because the freaking slide won't go back because the magazine's in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They'll shoot it. You can flip it off two safes and shoot the damn thing. So it's just ridiculous. You have to put the empty mag back in, pull the slide back so that it unchambers, and then pull the mag, and then you can put the gun down and have it open.
It takes all day, literally, to do
And it's
to
literally
do anything with it.
I was making this video like ragging on it, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make a video where I just rag on a gun. This gun did not decide I'm going to be weird. You know, something happened and it's gone weird. So what they're doing
was all the safeties because of pressure, or what do you think on that?
So here we go. So 68 Gun Control Act. Jennings talks to his friend. He decides, I'm going to start making guns. He does. His son makes 25s. That's Jennings, and then Cal Wesco, and then Brico, and now Jimenez. His daughter makes Davis, and that turns into Cobra. He makes Jennings. Raven. Ravens burns down and turns into Phoenix. So Jennings, okay, I'm saying Jennings because their name is Jennings.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, though.
Raven, the main company, makes a 25 ACP made out of Zamak, but it's basically a Browning, baby Browning. So he's perfectly content making this one gun. Now, he was in the City of Industry, so I have one of these, that's City of Industry, and that's like the only difference is he went from City of Industry to like some other city. So he moved from like one factory to another, but otherwise the gun remained the same for the most part. It just has a different roll mark on it. And he was content making this gun. Well, they didn't like the safety on it. Somebody didn't like the safety. So California says, Can't have that safety. So number one time they comply. Okay, let's comply with California law. You get the model MP25 with a different safety because of California law. Then it burns down and it becomes Phoenix. And they've discovered, because of fucking Winnemute, that doctor, that laws aren't working. Oh, you know why else they figured it out? Because they tried to outlaw handguns in California. And what happened? H.L. Richardson came along, created Gun Owners of California, stopped that, and then created Gun Owners of America, and we still have Gun Owners of America. So they tried to outlaw handguns in California. Because of Gun Owners of America, they couldn't. So then they said, Winnemute's like, oh, you know what? Let's not outlaw guns. Let's make it impossible to comply with the law. So that's where you start getting the roster and all this other shit. And in order to make a gun, so you have a roster of what can be made somewhere else and brought to California. So that prohibits guns from coming to California. But how do you stop guns from being made in California? You make them comply with outrageous safety obligations or whatever. So what you've got in a Phoenix is Jennings was in California and then went to Utah, went to Nevada, and is now in Nevada again in Henderson, because they can't make that gun in California. It won't comply with California standards.
Right.
Davis becomes Cobra. Cobra is in Utah because they can't make any of the Cobras in California. When Raven burned down and was Phoenix, I don't know why. Maybe just say fuck you. Oh, let's not forget something else. Have you ever heard of the Davis Law Firm? Mm-hmm. The attorneys that work with firearms policy in California?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Davis Law Firm. The Davis Arms, the daughter of Jennings, who married the factory Davis, maybe the factory superintendent. He's Davis. Their kid is the Davis Law Firm. So Ring of Fire also brought attorneys. So they born their own attorneys. And so now you got the Davis Law Firm might be part of this, and they might be keeping Phoenix and California to say, you keep making us comply and we'll keep making a fucking gun that complies. I suspect that's part of it, because this is a family that's been kicked the fuck around by California. Mm-hmm. And the people that are in charge of Phoenix now are the grandkids of Grandpa Jennings. So I could suspect, and I haven't been able to talk to him because I never tried, I guess. I suspect that they might just be making that gun to comply with California law, if nothing else, just to say this is the chaos that is the result of complying with California law.
Right. Because
anyway, so that's what it is. It's every other company got run out of California. That's how you stay in California, is you make a gun that has a ridiculous amount of safeties. You can tell it's committed by people who never probably done before.
Yeah, that makes sense. The reason I ask is you're talking about the Jimenez and then I thought you had said the Phoenix, and I've got the Phoenix, the HP-22, and I've also got the Jimenez with the JA-22, and it doesn't have basically, but it doesn't have all the safety stuff. I mean, it works like any other gun with a manual safety, basically.
Yeah, they look exactly the same, right? Because basically Bruce. Right? George is the main grandpa. Bruce is the fucking asshole. Bruce is a horrible person. Bruce, though, created the 22 version of his dad's gun, and when he did, he just shaved a bunch of Zamek off. You don't need that much Zamek when you're only shooting a 22 out of it, and it's got that look. So that's the look that Phoenix uses now, because they can, because it's their whatever idiot asshole uncle's gun, and they can. And then Jimenez does, because it is literally the same gun as Jennings. So they both look basically identical, like you're saying, minus the compliance of California.
Right. Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't hear any of that stuff before. How they're all tied together.
Explain the what we're talking about, because I really like my little flow chart there. It looks kind of corny, I suppose. It looks like an old shitty PowerPoint, but I like the idea of a flow chart, for me at least. It helps me keep track as I was learning their story, because again, it's used that I think it's a perfect, what do you call that? Like, it's a perfect example of the bigger issues we've got with guns and stuff, because it gets persecuted. These types of guns, everybody's first to throw these things under the bus. Like, oh, those are shitty guns, but nobody wants those. Those are shitty guns. So because of that, nobody puts any attention into paying attention, keeping track of them. And of course, it's super tedious. So how could you keep track of it? It's really difficult, even if you seriously wanted to keep track of it. And it was almost impossible to discover. It took me like 4 days, and I'm pretty good at researching shit. It took me a while to actually find all that stuff, and then put it together where it was like, made sense and was, verified. So then I found the forum, and those guys helped me with all the making sure it was legit, like I wasn't missing any gaps and everything was verified and stuff. So anyway, I think it's just a neat microcosm, is that the word, of the whole gun thing. Yeah, because it's so, I don't know, it touches so many different aspects of it or what. Anyway, so I was trying to describe that, the way that flowchart worked, because, when I think of the cards, I could see them being useful for that type of thing. Because now when I'm looking at, what was I talking about, Berdan, and how he insisted on using Sharp's rifles. Okay, so you're gonna know that there's some relationship between Sharps and Berdan now. But if like me, at least when I'm reading in a book, it's an effort for me to remember that this guy that I'm reading about here is from that paragraph over there, or I have yet to reach him in chapter 6 or something. Where with cards and you're fiddling with them, and I can just literally put them next to each other or something, and ideally the faces will help people, give them a little, what do they call that, like a visual, well, most of the people, sorry, for a visual recollection or whatever of the gun or the dates of the relationship between people, and like Smith and Wesson and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that took up some time, and it looks like we've got 2 minutes left. So if Japan jumps in here, we will be ending at about 206%, which is awesome. So again, we know they're going to get them made in Texas. I had confirmation on that. Once I do the math and stuff, we'll know what we're looking at, and we're going to do something on the back. I guess we haven't talked about back art. I'll do probably a show where we get into. I'll let it know. Like I'll put up a scheduled thing for Patreon people, so it's not like last minute or anything. But for people that might want to put in some input into like the back art or the Jokers and stuff, seems like people are really worried about what the Jokers are going to look like. So I'm okay with that. If people want to have a conversation about it, that's awesome, and throw ideas out there. For the back art, I've been thinking of, at the J.M. Davis Museum, how they have the mock-up of his actual hotel lobby.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of those panels, or whatever you'd call, like the patterns, that I think, you put, the right pattern on the back of a card so it fits good. I think that might be neat. And I'm thinking I tried to take really nice pictures, but I'm guessing Raphael, Gary, some of you other guys might have really, really nice pictures that
Raph would be the one to probably
pull some art
up first.
Megapixel or something.
He's got like a banging camera, man. It's pretty awesome.
So I'm thinking of something like that, like an actual pattern that would have been from the J.M. Davis. He's not an inventor, but that would give the J.M. Davis a little nod there. Because I've got some nods to the one of the cards. Which one was it? Oh, Ruger, right? So Ruger's a little controversial. I wish it was a less controversial card. But Ruger, for 15 years, was a patron of the Cody Museum or the Buffalo Bill Museum up in Cody, which is one of the best, from what I'm told, one of the best firearms museums. I know it's one of the ones with some of the most rare Winchesters and stuff, so it's an important firearms museum. So I have a nod to that museum in the deck, and so I'd like to include those kind of things as much as possible, just kind of like Easter eggs or whatever.
Right.
2 minutes. Let's see. So thanks to all the people who've been jumping in. I think it's done.
Sweet.
Any minutes left or anything. So appreciate everybody.
Did you want to do a gun shop of the night?
Sure, you got one.
Yeah, Shooter's World in Tampa, Florida. It's a 5-star shooting facility. You can rent machine guns. They have SAW. They have a AK-47. They've got quite a few M16s, and they've got a custom shop that you go inside. They've got like 4 or 5 custom shops, and you can go inside and go into a shotgun like specialized area. And they have shotguns from, normal retail prices all the way up into the $100,000 range. They have a tactical department for AR-15s and modern sporting rifles, and they have all different types of area for handguns, and just a really nice place. If you're ever in the Tampa area, make sure you go in and check it out. It's very nice.
Right on. I think I've heard of it before, and it's weird. We have a place in Arizona called Shooters World, but it doesn't look like they're affiliated at all. Is Tampa? No, Orlando is well with Disneyland and stuff, right? Or Disney World.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Disney World is just a little bit south of Kissimmee, and then Tampa's just a little bit north of Kissimmee, a little bit south of St. Pete. Or I'm sorry, north of St. Pete.
Right on. So I don't know when I'm going to Tampa. I would certainly like to go tool around. One of my goals is still to do the tour. Hopefully, if I can continue to do projects like this and maybe consult. I was thinking about trying to do some consulting with shops and stuff. I don't know what skills I might still have on the web. But yeah, it'd be neat to be able to work out of the van and do stuff with the computer and tool around over there. There's a couple of manufacturers. I certainly wouldn't mind meeting up with Serbu. I met Kellgren before, and hope to tour the Caltech place. I think that's a super innovative place. And, well, I've seen, I can't say all of them, I've seen a bunch of the Ring of Fire factories we were talking about a minute ago when I went there in 16 with the old band. And Smeggy was there. We toured around and saw most of those factories. And then when I was here last time, I checked out a couple more. So it would be neat to see the kind of sister facet of that, all the Saturday night, the literal Saturday night special stuff. That as soon as the 68 happened, they just would send all the disassembled parts before they were guns to Florida, and then you people would put them together.
Yeah.
Then to back up to the country. So yeah, okay, you can't build you can't import the guns. No problem. We'll just build them on the boat or whatever, build them on the dock, and not even affect the importation almost at all. But I think that would be neat. I don't know what's left of all that. I suspect it's a lot like the stuff in California. It's just, industrial addresses that are now a motorcycle shop or a, guitar amp repair place or something. But it's just neat to see some of those places. Of course, then you've got the SEALs Museum is down there. There's all the space shuttle stuff. You guys hoard all the space stuff. You in Texas?
Yeah.
Space stuff.
But the cool thing about the Ravens and the Jennings, I used to help out at a gun shop back in 84 and 85, and that's when all those guns were being built on boats in the ports, and we were getting them in by the hundreds. And basically they were like chrome plated, and you could tell where they had gotten a little bit of exposure on the boats to salt water. But yeah, we sold quite a few 25 caliber Ravens, and also the 25 or the 22 caliber Jennings and 32 caliber Jennings.
Now that I'm thinking about it, Atchkinson is from Florida too, so the AA-12 comes from Florida, I think.
Yes, it does.
To Florida, but I would probably go to Florida when it's winter, so that I have the least possibility of being around when it's gross there. Right?
Yeah. Anytime past, I would say, October, and you're going to have low humidity, and you're going to have cooler temperatures and just better overall time. But
So
I would help you and show you around,
Right on.
take you around too.
Well, like I say, that'd be, the overall plan still is to work towards that. And I don't know, I'll see how I can do with selling the collections off and effort in towards some of these other projects. I'm just getting texts now from people who are like, hey, I missed the project. Can I pay you directly? What did it be? 6 minutes after? So I think that's fine.
Well, can't they go to PayPal on gun websites?
Yeah, I mean, they could, but like I was saying, my PayPal is a massive mess. If you get anything with like regular payments, they give you all these different alerts. And then, like, let's say somebody's credit card's different after a year, right? So for a $12 charge, it'll go, we're going to initiate a $12 charge. We charged them $12. Oh, it didn't work. Like, oh, we charged them $12. Oh, it didn't work. And I don't know what the span is between them, so I don't keep track of them all, but it's, some increment, 12 hours, 24 hours, something. Like every so many hours they're going to try. And I don't even know. There's too many of them for me to keep track of. And because there's so many of them, any amount of time I have to pay attention to PayPal is mostly getting rid of it all so that I can get to the real numbers so that I can get them out of PayPal and keep moving on with books. Because I don't have I'm not a full-time accountant. I don't have all the time in the world to just do books all the time. So anyhow, there's just this mess on PayPal. So yeah, you could, or somebody could just throw me $20 on PayPal, but that's like going up to somebody who's like, let's put it in perspective for somebody like Midnight. If he's busy in the kitchen doing and so it's better to go through the store, the Patreon thing, because then it gets attributed to a person and it comes through a channel, I guess the way to say it. It comes through where I can actually monitor it. It would be like going straight to the source and just dropping a buck in your bank. Like, how the hell do you know a buck got dropped in your bank if somebody wasn't making you aware of it? I don't know if that makes sense. So PayPal is a way to send money, but it's not I don't know. It's not like going through a cart at a store where it's going to come through with an order number and a identification tag of some kind. What are we off air? Let's go over here.
No, I'm listening to what you're saying. But so if you sign up though for gun websites, do you pay with PayPal?
I know I put gun in a lot of my shit because I talk about guns, but let's start looking at it from the other fucking word. Gun websites is me, right? It's like
right.
Shit I do on YouTube. Gun channels is a community I built 5 years ago, and it's you people. You people are gun channels. So don't focus on the gun side of all this shit. Focus on the channel side. So what you were asking me is when you join gun channels, because you can't join gun websites. It's not a thing.
Okay.
Just get that, because it's all similar, right? And I know it's frustrating. So focus on the second side of it. The channels, when you join the channels on YouTube, on PayPal, is what I'm saying. Is it's I don't know what to call that. It's a system that is PayPal is incorporated into gun channels, but it triggers these little, what do you call them? Instances, like little pips on your. If you ever go into PayPal and look, I would be curious to see what some normal person's PayPal looks like. It probably says things like,
mine
on eBay, or like, I sent money to somebody. My PayPal looks like fucking chaos. It looks like a shotgun pattern compared to somebody who shot 3 rounds with a 38.
Mine does the same if they shop through the swag store. It has to do with the way the API is hooked up in the website, I'm guessing. But it's like, so-and-so ordered this. So-and-so is billed for this. So-and-so paid for this. It's like, you're right. It's like 3 different ones. It's like every little step of the process, they put an entry in there.
And it's just insane. And then, like I say, if the payment doesn't go through, somebody quit paying into channels or whatever, credit card's different or something, I don't even know. Like I say, there's lots of different things that'll happen. Now you get one of those instances every 12 hours. Right. And eventually it'll crap out with some. And then, like I said, even if I wanted, there's no, we're talking, I don't know, 4 people or 5 people a month or something. So it's $50. It would take me hours and hours to figure it all out, and then I would figure out, oh, okay, it's $45 this month instead of $47 last month. I don't know. It's one of those things I've got to draw a line. So that's one of the reasons, I don't know, we're talking about stuff. We've set up a Patreon for gun channels. So when Gun Channels was created, it's a bunch of software that allows us to be a community, right? So when we built the place, it was because YouTube was kind of a chaotic mess at the time. YouTube started out with a bunch of people kicking each other in the balls and then showing cute kittens playing pianos and stuff, and everybody thought that was great. And then at some point, people like Nothing Fancy, honestly, started putting content down that was worth a shit, right? I remember the first thing I ever saw from Nothing Fancy was like he took apart an ultralight backpack, where he went super ultralight backpack and hiking up into somewhere. So he took apart that backpack in his living room, and you can imagine all the little stuff you might bring on a couple of days outing, hiking up, just a backpack. It was just a super interesting video to see somebody actually take it apart and not be, up until that point, my experience with backpacking stuff is like, I'm selling you this Gore-Tex stuff, such, or I'm selling you these boots. So your articles were like, here's this healthy backpack, and I've got Thinsulate blah 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 and such fork blah blah blah, right? And you're just getting sold everything in there, so it's all you get. So this Nothing Fancy guy was like, wow, this guy's just talking about his experience with stuff he bought, and that was pretty neat. So people saw that kind of stuff and started to do the same. And now you had people that were putting stuff down that was worth looking at. So people would go to the comments and say stuff like, that was awesome, thank you, that was worth looking at. Or can I ask a question about such and such? And then certain people were like, yeah, let's answer those questions. So we had this community that started happening. And as that started to happen pretty quick, YouTube changed from kicks in the balls and kittens, and it turned into a little bit more of what we're used to today. But it was crude, and you couldn't make money, and it was just people who were basically trying to illustrate stuff that was too elaborate or too complicated to describe in a forum post or like in a series of pictures or something. Because back then it was just forums. It was forums, and that was it. That was your way to communicate online. AOL was dead already. Nobody was on MySpace. Facebook didn't really exist for humans yet. It was just for kids. And so YouTube was like this alternative where now all of a sudden you could have this community or whatever. So where the hell am I getting to this? We were in this pretty good place where we could make a video in response to other people's videos. They were letting people become partners. People were starting to make a few bucks. There was actually a reason to hang out on YouTube. So that meant the content was getting even better and stuff. So we were really digging it. And then I guess they said, oh, Facebook exists and they're horrible. So let's make this thing called Google Plus and everybody will love it. And then they won't use Facebook anymore and we'll own the internet. So we'll just remove video responses and we'll remove, I can't remember all the cool shit we used to have. And let's just make everybody use Google Plus from now on. And then let's like change their usernames and stuff so that they can't have aliases. Let's make everybody use their real names. It was horrible. So half of us were trying not to use our real names because we had established channels with brands, right? With product, whatever we'll call them, like our channel names. And they're trying to make us all use our regular names like Facebook wants you to use. And it was just bad. So when we built this place, it was a response to that. It was like, hey, let's get a place where we can build a conversation and not be beholden to these people's like little fights between Facebook and YouTube. And what was this, 13? So this was, people were already making good scratch. I guess we weren't thinking about money. I guess Ralph, at first he wanted it to be a thing where like we got real money. Like he wanted us to have advertisers and then pay people to put content here. And that was just never my thing. Plus, I don't think that would have been a working business model. There was just never that much money in it because Full 30 came around like 10 minutes after we built this place, right? So and they had all the resources in the world and funding, and they weren't able to make that happen, I don't think. So anyway, so that's what we built this place as a refuse from YouTube and a better tool than YouTube. So when we put it together, what I was getting at with the money thing was we didn't want to just leave it open. to everybody, because then we'd have the same exact fucking problems as YouTube, except we'd be paying the bill instead of YouTube, right? So in order to put a barrier to entry, we said you have to pay $1. And the easiest way to do that at the time was to just charge people $1 on PayPal. And since the system uses PayPal, we put that in place or whatever. And at first it was $1 a month. And that was the worst decision I ever made. I didn't know. But as much bitching and moaning as I do about $12 a year, I almost went out of business doing $1 a month because it was insane. I don't know how many members we had, but it was probably 100, I guess, let's say. It was because, I don't know, it was not enough to pay the bills, but it was like a shit ton. So, holy moly, like, talk about just a worthless, like, PayPal is worthless at that point. It's just, you can't even use it. I couldn't even pay my regular bills and stuff, like the things I would normally use PayPal for, because the stuff would be like 4 pages behind. It was just a mess. So at some point, I think I did that for like a year, and then switched it to $12 a year instead of $1 a month. And anyway, so that's where the PayPal even came from in the first place, was just to make gun channels not free, to keep it from being open to just anybody to walk in and lay a big turd on the ground. Like, we wanted to have a conversation that was not just open to the fucking whole world like YouTube is. Problem with YouTube is people started getting angry and shit when everybody was getting frustrated with the Google Plus. People are going to lash out, and they're going to lash out at the people I guess that they want to shit where they eat. So they're like, oh, okay, we don't like what's going on, so F you for entertaining us. So it was really a weird situation. And yeah, like I say, we built it as a way to get rid of some of these. There was like some really abusive people. Kind of like what Ghost experienced trying to hang out with those Reddit weirdos.
Right.
I mean, some people just get absurdly angry, like, you know, beyond normal reaction to somebody who challenges their whatever, you know, their thoughts or their opinion or whatever. Like, these people got seriously upset. And it's scary. So it's one of the reasons, again, it's one of the lessons I learned too. Like, I don't understand why people choose fame. It's the people that are, what do you call it, like celebrity, that get the weirdest people that like are possessive, I guess. I don't know what to, you know, it's just weird, you know, like you hear about it for, you know, attractive young actresses or something, but with like Yankee and Matt and stuff, ugh, it's odd. Yeah, people getting just really, really seriously worked on what they're, you know. Anyway, so gun channels was a way to get us a step away from all of that, and it has evolved ever since. Like, literally from day one, me and Ralph didn't agree on what we were going to do with it, and except that what we, you know, we knew it needed to be something over here. We just didn't know which direction we were going to go, but definitely in, you know, away from YouTube. And in 5 years we probably had at least, I wish I'd have to get together with all the original people and find out. We'll have to do some effort for that for the 5th anniversary and try to group you guys all up, because there's some people like DB Cooper I'm pretty sure DB Cooper is member number 3, something like that. So literally been around since me and Ralph put it up one afternoon or whatever it was. Like, he's been around since the entire time to see it all. You know, some of these people have been around for a long time, can help me figure out, I'm going to say 3 major waves of gun channels. Even though it's 5 years old, they kind of overlap, right? So it's, I'd say, I don't know how many people in here have been around since the beginning. Think still in here? No, not even in here. I don't know how long you guys have been around, but like I say, it's probably a couple of major, like, what would you call that? Like, you know, changes of guard or whatever, like, you know, the main people.
Yeah, right.
Well, where DB Cooper was one of the first ones too. If I remember right.
3. Yes.
I don't know how we got off on that, but there's a little gun channels history. Huh?
He was asking about DB, and I said yes. DB was like number 3.
Anyway, so we've got the PayPal thing, and it's a major pain in the ass, but it works. And basically, the $7.62 a month people are who are paying the server bills and everything, and that's good to go. So what we did with the Patreon is what I'm trying to do with the Patreon is raise the kind of money that we need to get an employee, because I figure. We're having a gun channels chat now, so it turned out at the daily gun show now it's just a gun channel strategy thing. But if anybody wanted to stick around, that's what you're getting. So what are we gonna either do nothing and it'll just, you know, be like a party boat that drives out into the water without any kind of direction, right? That's no fun. So at some point we got to figure out what we want to do, sink or swim, right? So I don't want this thing to depend on me. What if I have a heart attack tomorrow? I smoke all the time, I eat bacon and shit. I'm reckless, so if I die, I don't want gun channels to die. So I'd like to set it up somehow that it's just a thing. I don't know what that's called, but you know, an entity that can continue and do it as some sort of committee or group or what, where you know we have a basic set of goals, basically be cool and you know don't sell out, and then promote the second, and then get a couple of people that you know are admin / moderators that can fill in, and then get somebody who's like a full-time. I think somebody ideally would be like a Jimmy, somebody who can do a daily show. I really think gun channels would be a different place if we had somebody who could just hang out and constantly be there as like a helpful person, right? But then host something like a daily thing that accumulates all the different interesting shit that's been going on and turns that into a podcast and a blog, so that we have gun channels itself documents the activities that people are doing, so that you're not obligated as a creator to burden yourself with also putting it on gun channels. Gun channels can go out and help you, right? You're paying gun channels so that gun channels is helping your efforts out. So you know you tag something gun channels finds out and amplifies it. So I think we could have a podcast that's all the best of gun channels, and that could be weekly. Do the same thing with like a blog, you know, a written version. Think about what Marco was able to do with the gun channels _ that originally was gun channels. That was it. Marco is a freaking artist of Instagram. He's by no means the only one, and he's willing to offer his knowledge to others. He's helping Too Hottie right now. So you know, there's the potential of somebody who's a full-time gun channels person to just do insane things with the social media platforms. We have a competent, knowledgeable, creative bunch of people here, and if they had a person who was working for them, like what the fuck, that would be even better. So if we could get the Patreon side to pay for somebody to actually be here doing that every day, imagine what gun channels would be like. When we do things like the meetups, how awesome would it be if there's a person whose job it is to make sure that shit happens, right? He's on the clock. He's our person. He's our, you know, our hired ally.
Right.
So as far as like sponsorship and shit, I'm personally don't like sponsorship. Every time I see stuff that has sponsorship, it's fake, and I suspect what the hell their motives are. I really like the vibe we have on gun channels and the way that people can come in and do their thing. So if we can keep it crowdfunded and you know, somebody can come along, and I don't know if it has to be one person, you know, I'm just spitballing now, but I really think that could be the direction of gun channels. And that's where I put up the Patreon, so that right now I'd really like to get it to just be Patreon. I just don't have any type of funding to be able to say, turn off PayPal tomorrow, because I've done that before. When we went from $1 a month to $12 a year, that was a fucking hard decision because I've never been rich. I had to go to PayPal and tell however many subscribers we had, fuck you all, you're all turned off, and hope that they all came back and put the $12 back. I don't really remember. It was, you know, I don't have fingernails because that's always frustrating when I have to do shit like that. But that'll be what I have to do at some point. I'm looking forward to the day when I can do that with the PayPal, but I can't do it yet. But our Patreon is at like $100, so that doesn't even pay for the chat server, right? That's not enough to support gun channels. That with the PayPal is enough to support gun channels still. I don't make any money, but it pays for gun channels. But it's not enough for like a Jimmy, or even a Jimmy a couple of times a month, let alone a couple of times a week, let alone every single day. Right. But that'll be the goal. I'm thinking that's you know, I don't, unless somebody's got some other plans, and I'm definitely interested in listening to other suggestions, but I'd like to work towards something like that where gun channels becomes not just a place where we can use stuff, but a useful amplifier that just kicks the shit out of, and then, you know, what we want it to do. And then that lets somebody like a Gary or a Rick or somebody like a Dead Horse and Dave, while you guys are doing the history thing, like you can just do your thing and go fucking live your life, knowing that you put it on gun channels, it's going to be amplified. It's going to go get reached out. It's going to get, you know, shared or linked or whatever. And as you get one person doing that kind of stuff, that's super easy. I mean, once you start doing that, Clover can tell you that kind of stuff is, you can do that while we're in chats. I mean, that's,
yeah.
I mean, it could be knives. And how awesome would it be if we just were able to pay knives to get paid to do what he's already doing? And then, you know, he's out there efforting for us or something. So I think we could have some real potential with that kind of stuff. And then gun channels just keeps going. Then I doesn't like say, then I'm out of the picture. Because honestly, I'm not a good business person. It's not going to go very long with me because, like I say, I don't have the resources to just say, oh, that $1,000.
Yeah.
And then, hey, what do you know? If we were able to effort that, then guess what? Every second matters is like an extra 2 hours a day. And then every second matters. Is that powerful? We might actually change the fucking planet right there.
Yep.
Kill the NFA. The whole world figures out that guns aren't bad, that your neighbor isn't out to get you. Everybody drops their border walls, and the world is in peace. We have Star Trek. We start to explore space. Aliens come down and go, oh, you guys have finally got your shit together. Let's give you a real PKM made out of lasers and shit.
Right. Yeah.
We just have to keep an eye out for the robots.
Maybe sometime 100 years from now, somebody will be building a card deck of people who helped save the Second Amendment, and they'll trace it all back to gun channels. As if it weren't for these people, we wouldn't have our guns today like we do.
There you go.
There'll be a G. Webb's card and, you know, all that stuff. Of course, he'd be the Ace of Spades.
I'll be the Joker.
Oh, the Joker. There you go. Who knows, though? I think this is a very valuable community. Definitely something you wouldn't want to lose.
Yeah, and I mean, and we're majorly in the infancy of all of this. We really are. I mean, I know we complain about, well, you know, YouTube used to be like this, and that's just proof that, you know, all of this social media and everything, it's really in its infancy right now. Who knows what it's going to be in the next 5 years, 10 years, and how powerful it can be and what we can use it for. I mean, imagine with you know, you've got Netflix and Roku, and you've got all this stuff now, right? Netflix is doing original series, and Roku. I know some guys locally that do some hunting stuff, and they're through Roku. So I mean, they basically are broadcasting, right? I mean, they basically have their own TV channel, essentially. So,
yeah, well, look at We Like Shooting.
And I think it's just a matter of time before you see, with all this internet-based TV, you see a situation like the old, you know, cable access channels. I think you're going to start seeing a situation like that, to where you're going to be able to get maybe not for free, but at least for a reasonable cost. You know, that Patreon could support it or something else. You could essentially get in front of people on their television set.
Oh yeah, we already are, I'm sure.
Well, as far yeah, you can get YouTube and all of that, but what I'm talking about is like your own channel on the, you know.
No, I see that's where it's. I mean, it is going that way. YouTube is proof that it's going from. Well, I mean, just everything. It went from the 3-letter networks to the UHF, and then it went to cable, and then YouTube is proof that it's diversifying even more. And yeah, we live in a big enough planet that, you know, it's all about, once there's a way for people to find the audience and the people that are interested to find somebody who's creating the topics that they're interested in. It's just that distribution, and YouTube happens to be the first one that came along and made that efficient, but they're certainly not the only or the last.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey,
What's going on there, Harsh?
Number 73, that's what's going on Gun Channels. That's me. Gun Channels is a fortune teller. 73, man. That's the ham radio number.
Is that a ham number?
Yeah, that's how you end every conversation. And that's the way of saying, like, best wishes and have a nice day, whatever, in ham radio. 73.
And that's your member number?
Yeah.
Don't they say 3, like with the plural?
73, 73s, 73. You can say it different ways.
Cycle camp. And the story you can go into his technical class, and I told him, hey, wait, take both tests right away, and he passed his expert, no problem.
Oh, wow. Extra? He got his extra?
Oh, wait, sorry. He passed his general right after his full, right?
Yeah.
And then, like, oh, I'm curious. And anyway, yeah, he went and hit his extra with, like, I forget. He only missed, like, 2 or something. So, yeah, he definitely nailed his extra. So he's been over there extra and all up over there.
That's very cool. Yeah, I got to go take my test and get that over with. I don't know why I'm waiting.
Hey, thanks for jumping in, Clover. Appreciate it.
Take it easy.
So this is just turning it into a super long daily gun show, I guess, / chat. So we've been watching the end of the campaign there and just kind of bullshitting about the days and what's next for gun channels, I guess. Yankee did some sort of crazy telethon today on his channel. Did you see that?
I saw the link on Gun Channels, actually, and I hopped over to it really quick just to check it out. Yeah, good for him. Yeah, that's nice that he did that.
It is very cool.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm gonna jump off now. Thanks for the invite there, G.
You bet. Thanks again for jumping in.
Hey, congratulations.
So I don't know if we should keep going or call this a lobby or put it down. So give us some feedback. I see Hottie's out there, and Tater's already shut down, so I don't know who else would be running a show this late. Dead Horse is still in here. Where are you on your schedule? Sleeping. So on the YouTube side, somebody's asking, Sexy's asking, is Hosh a gun guy?
Yes. Yes, I am. Gosh, man, I used to shoot a lot more. I was shooting shotgun primarily 2 to 3 times a week. Doing some competitive, hot mic. Doing some competitive shooting, mainly skeet. And having that second kid, man, the first kid was manageable. That second one, though, changes everything. You got to kind of pick your time, and some things you just get much less time with. So the shooting is dialed back a bit, and it was about the same relative time that the ham radio thing started to pick up.
How is Edison doing?
Edison is a holy terror, man. And if Edison was just like Ben, things probably would have been different, but oh man, Edison is a nut. Edison is a nut.
I've been watching some of the stuff you've been putting on Instagram, and I'm like, wow. And then Ben's so big now. It's like I remember when I took that picture in front of your house on the bike.
Yeah, it was good stuff. No, Ben's great. Ben's really conscientious, and he obviously doesn't want to hurt himself at every moment. And Edison's like, hold my sippy cup. Check this out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he like literally is the personification of no fucks given. Oh, did we lose G?
Oh no, I've just muted.
Oh no, sorry, I was looking at the wrong logo.
I was reading all you. I didn't realize you'd been chatting on the YouTube, on the Gun Channel side over there.
Oh yeah, for a little while. No, I was oh god damn it with the sorry, hold on.
Slim's been asking if we're going to do the showdown today. I don't want to do it tonight anymore. We'll do that one tomorrow.
Sorry.
Normally we do it on Wednesdays, but we didn't do it this week. Wait, did we do it this week? I don't think we did. Maybe we'll do it tomorrow. All right, well, I think Dave and Dead Horse have been worn out. I don't know if Gary's not.
No, I'm still here, brother. I was just waiting. How's the dog doing?
I don't know. She's not around here, so she's probably bed sleeping.
Aw, she's probably waiting for daddy.
She's doing pretty good. I took her to the Walmart. I found some cash yesterday. I didn't know I had cash, so I was like, "Oh snap! I'm gonna go eat." So I went and got a burrito and took the dog to the Walmart, and so now every time I take her out, she thinks she wants to just jump right in the van. So I think she's got the van life already in her.
Yeah, I saw that when you put that up, that she was waiting for you. How does she do with the hot weather?
Oh, she pants a lot.
Yeah, a lot of fur.
But the fur is as much an air conditioner as it is a heater, so they, whatever, get some kind of cooling from that, breathe to their mouth or whatever, or cool to their mouth and their feet. But they don't overheat or anything.
Yeah, you can even get their hair damp with a damp towel, and it'll help cool their overall core temp.
You got to be careful with that, though. In California, and I'm sure Arizona is probably even worse, people would sometimes take a hose and just drench their dog down, and they'd end up like killing their dog because the water would heat up, superheat their body. So the general guideline is like kind of like you said, get a towel real wet and lay a towel on the ground and just let the dog lay on it, and that is more effective than wetting them their body, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, how long you guys been going tonight? Oh, it started at, would you start at 9 normal time?
No, because Clover had a longer show, and then I knew I was going to be going for till midnight. So I think we ended up starting a little bit late, but yeah, it's been running for a while.
Yeah, very cool.
It's been going on quite a while, actually.
Try to keep the campaigns like start on a cool day and end on a cool day. So we started on the 10th anniversary at Heller, and then end on Colt's birthday, and then that was midnight, I guess. So.
Yeah, I was a dumbass. I had like 15 hours of work today, and it was like 12, 13 hours yesterday, and I've just been getting ready for this last 2 days, and I just totally forgot. I had it in my email. I was like, pulled it up, and I was like, cool, I'll get right back to that. And it was sitting on my computer that I haven't touched in like 3 days. I haven't touched anything in like 3 days.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to do, since there are people watching, but people aren't really chatting. So run over to Gun Channels. I'll just drop the link in the chat over there, and we'll just make it an off-air chat. So that way we can, I just don't like to leave it running live. So I'll end it and say, well, end the live portion of it, and we'll just hang out in here. And like I said, there'll be a link over there. There's still a link for the Patreon people who might want to jump in, of course. But thanks everybody for watching and listening. We'll be back tomorrow, same time.